Chapter 1366. In this huge hall, there was a behemoth with a body length of more than 1,000 feet. Its oily black armor reflected a chilling light that made one's heart palpitate. It was an incomparably huge nether mantis. The terrifying aura was constantly being emitted from its body. This huge nether mantis was lying there, its body slowly moving up and down as if it was brewing something. Moreover, the aura on its body seemed to be faintly weak. Yichen immediately guessed that this guy was probably the king of mantises. Yichen narrowed his eyes, afraid to make a sound. He quietly observed the nether mantis king. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes. He saw a huge black egg that was half the height of a person suddenly roll out from behind the nether mantis king. There were about 100 of these huge black eggs near the wall. Yichen immediately understood that the nether mantis king was constantly laying eggs here. Yichen nodded secretly. No wonder he felt that the aura of the nether mantis king was slightly weak. At the thought of this, Yichen secretly had an idea. His eyes quietly glanced at the 100 over nether mantis eggs. He had personally witnessed the prowess of these nether mantises. If he could bring this thing back and hatch it himself and refine it into his own pet, then he could use it as a meat shield in future battles. It would be a very good idea. Perhaps the strength of those 20 to 30 feet long nether mantises was not worth mentioning. But if Yichen raised them to a length of more than 100 feet, then wouldn't it be like carrying dozens of demon god experts with strong defense with him? What was even more terrifying was that these nether mantises could also be invisible. In this case, they could be used as a very powerful trump card. The more Yichen thought about it, the more he felt that this method was feasible. He quietly moved behind the nether mantis king, approaching those huge black eggs bit by bit. Finally, after dilly-dallying for about an hour, Yichen stood beside these huge black eggs. Then he silently waved his hand and kept these over 100 nether mantis eggs into a small world. Yichen let out a long sigh. Just as he was about to leave this place without anyone noticing, he suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. He raised his head abruptly, only to see a pair of blood-red eyes staring at him like lanterns. Immediately after, a fierce cold light slashed towards him. This fierce sword light was too fast, like a sudden clap of thunder. Yichen had no time to think about how the nether mantis king discovered him. He immediately dodged to the side without caring about his image. Immediately after that, he cast his own magical powers, wanting to leave this huge cave. Unfortunately, in the next 15 minutes, the nether mantis king's body was faster than his speed and directly blocked the entrance of the tunnel. This son of AB*TCH is much more powerful than I thought. Yichen never thought that the nether mantis king could see through invisibility, nor did he think that the nether mantis king's carapace could withstand the Godslayer's attack. Just as Yichen thought of this, the nether mantis king let out an angry roar. He waved the two giant machetes in his hands that were more than 100 feet long, waving them quickly as if he wanted to cut Yichen into pieces. Yichen realized that his invisibility technique had failed, so he simply revealed himself. While dodging the attacks of the nether mantis king, he observed the nether mantis. Damn it, I didn't want to fight with it, but since I can't leave, I'll just do it. Thinking of this, Yichen's mind moved, and the innate cardinal treasure Godslayer instantly appeared in his right hand. After glancing at the nether mantis, Yichen immediately rushed toward the nether mantis king. It was indeed the nether mantis king. Whether it was in terms of defense or speed, this fellow was dozens of times more powerful than the nether mantises that Yichen had encountered before. Yichen was not discouraged. He flashed and moved. His body was erratic as he dodged quickly in the space of tens of thousands of square meters. The huge, sharp blades of the nether mantis king brushed past Yichen's body every time, but they did not hurt him at all. The Godslayer in Yichen's hand also carried an incomparably sharp aura as it constantly cut the body of the nether mantis king. Although Yichen knew that this level of attack might not be able to break through its defense, Yichen gritted his teeth and kept probing. He kept attacking the nether mantis king's joints. Then, Yichen keenly discovered that the nether mantis king had turned around and blocked the exit. It seemed to be intentionally or unintentionally hiding its abdomen outside the attack range of Yi-chun. Yi-chun rolled his eyes and seemed to understand something. This nether mantis king was just giving birth, and it did not seem to be in its peak state. Otherwise, it would be even more difficult for him. Since he had discovered it, Yi-chun's next attack focused on the nether mantis king's abdomen. The nether mantis king suddenly let out an extremely angry roar. It kept roaring, and the frequency of its attacks became even faster. As a result, Yi-chun was even more certain that his discovery was correct. The nether mantis king's weakness was its abdomen. Yi-chun focused all of his attacks on one point. Since he could not break through its defense in one strike, then he would attack 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Yi-chun's attack speed was extremely fast. In just an instant, he could stab thousands of times. Quantitative change would eventually lead to qualitative change. When Yi-chun's Godslayer kept attacking one point on the nether mantis king's abdomen, it finally broke through a part of the nether mantis king's scales, revealing a black hole about the size of a human head. Yi-chun's reaction was extremely fast. With a flip of his hand, he threw 100 geomagnetic thunderstorm bombs directly into the hole. At that moment, Yi-chun detonated the geomagnetic thunderstorm bombs in the nether mantis king's abdomen. After a loud bang came from inside, the nether mantis king screamed and fell to the ground. Plumes of green smoke kept coming out from all parts of its body. The nether mantis king's aura also weakened a lot. "I'll kill you while you're down." Yi-chun would not let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Anyway, he had an endless supply of geomagnetic thunderstorm bombs in his hand. He directly broke a few big holes in the nether mantis king's body, then quickly threw the geomagnetic thunderstorm bombs in his hand. In the blink of an eye, thousands of geomagnetic thunderstorm bombs had entered the nether mantis king's body. Rumble. As if the earth was shaking, the nether mantis king could not hold on anymore. Black blood kept spurting out of its mouth, and it kept twitching on the ground. Its abdomen was already full of holes from the explosion. It looked like it was about to die. Chapter 1367. The commotion here had also attracted the attention of those outside. Suddenly, those super-large nether mantises rushed out of the passage. After seeing the scene inside, these nether mantises all rushed toward Yi-chun crazily. Yi-chun immediately complained. He had already seen through this huge passage that those nether mantises outside were crazily rushing in. Once he was surrounded, it would be troublesome to fight his way out. Seeing the extremely weak nether mantis king, Yi-chun suddenly had an idea. He still had the ancient contract book in his hands. Although he had already used up 2 quotas, he could still sign 10 quotas. Although the nether mantis king was not part of the demon clan, it did not mean that it would not be effective. Yi-chun was now trying his best. With a thought, the ancient contract book appeared in his hand. Suddenly, a golden light burst out, completely enveloping him and the nether mantis king. Then, Yi-chun felt that there was a faint connection between him and the nether mantis king, and there was an obvious resistance from the nether mantis king. Yi-chun snorted coldly, increasing the pressure here, and transmitted his thoughts. If the nether mantis king submitted to him, it could live. Otherwise, even if he could not escape, he would drag it down with him. Finally, the ancient contract book flashed with a golden light, and then there was a small and exquisite picture of a nether mantis on one of the pages. He immediately breathed a sigh of relief. The contract was successful. The nether mantis king had now become his magic pet. Yi-chun felt the connection between his mind and the nether mantis king, and he also breathed a deep sigh of relief. Immediately, Yi-chun ordered these giant nether mantises to leave the cave. Now that the contract had been signed, the nether mantis king naturally did not dare to be negligent. It immediately let out a weak roar. Those nether mantises that were about to rush to Yi-chun immediately stopped attacking, then roared and retreated without hesitation. In just a few breaths, all the nether mantises retreated along the passage, leaving only Yi-chun and the nether mantis king in the entire hall. Yi-chun sat weakly on the ground. It was really a close shave. He was almost dismembered by these angry nether mantises. He turned his head and glanced at the nether mantis king. This guy had been tortured badly. Its entire abdomen was almost blown up. It was lying there weakly with its eyes closed. Now that it had become his magic pet, of course, Yi-Chun would not let it die like this. Yi-Chun supported the nether mantis king's huge head with one hand, and then transmitted a thought to it. Little Black, from now on, you are Yi-Chun's magic pet. Don't worry, I won't let you die like this. What do you need to recover quickly? The nether mantis king was now extremely weak, and it did not seem to have any resistance to being called Little Black. It transmitted some information to Yi-Chun. Yi-Chun immediately knocked on its head and said, "You have a big appetite. You even know how to eat well." The nether mantis king suddenly felt very wronged. Usually, these were its food. It and Yi-Chun stared at each other for a while. Yi-Chun had no choice but to wave his hand and take out all the rare red copper essence, dark iron essence, and other materials that he had obtained before. They were all piled up into a small mountain in front of the nether mantis king. The nether mantis king suddenly became energetic. It opened its huge mouth and sucked all the precious materials into its mouth. The crunching sound of chewing could be heard, which made Yi-Chun feel a pang of pain. This guy's teeth were really good. It was equivalent to swallowing hundreds of fairy weapons. However, when he thought of the harvest that the nether mantis king might bring him, Yi-Chun's mood became better again. He saw that after the nether mantis king swallowed these precious materials, it quickly recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Its abdomen, which was full of holes, was constantly wriggling. Soon, no trace of injury could be seen from the outside. While the nether mantis king was recovering, Yi-Chun also sat cross-legged on the ground to recover his energy. After about an hour, when he opened his eyes, he saw the nether mantis king's huge head in front of him at a glance. A pair of red eyes were silently staring at him. The nether mantis king, which was now Little Black, had a look of submission in its eyes. There was no trace of ferocity, but its huge body and huge blade arms that were more than 1,000 feet long still looked a little ferocious and terrifying. Little Black, how long have you been here? How many territories do you have in total? How many subordinates do you have? After Yi-Chun asked, a simple and honest voice suddenly came from Little Black. Master, I don't know how much time has passed. Anyway, I have been here since I was born. Maybe 10,000 years, or maybe 100,000 years. My people are spread over millions of kilometers of territory, and there are almost 1 billion of them. Listening to Little Black's narration, Yi-Chun slowly opened his mouth. He didn't expect that the number of nether mantises under Little Black's command would be more than 1 billion. Now, they were completely under his command. If he brought more than 1 billion nether mantises out, wouldn't he be able to conquer the entire untainted land? However, Little Black's next words poured cold water on Yi-Chun's head. He said that as long as the nether mantis clan was born in the foggy swamp, they couldn't leave the foggy swamp. Once they left the soil that they relied on for survival, they would automatically explode. Yi-Chun was suddenly a little speechless. He had planned to bring the nether mantis army out to kill everyone, but in the end, they couldn't leave the foggy swamp. Wasn't this nonsense? After that, he felt a little relieved. If such a terrifying creature could leave the foggy swamp, then most of the untainted land would have been occupied by them. However, Yi-Chun was a little puzzled. It seemed that in his previous life, there were also traces of nether mantises in other places. What was going on? Little Black then said to him, Master, the nether mantis that was born in the foggy swamp came into contact with this gray fog as soon as it was born. It was branded with the aura here, and it was not accepted by the heavenly axiom outside. However, if you take the egg out and incubate it outside the foggy swamp, it might be able to survive. Yi-Chun's eyes suddenly lit up. This was a good idea. He also understood why there were nether mantises in the outside world in his previous life. Since he could steal the eggs of nether mantises, why couldn't others? Chapter 1368. It was just that others were not as lucky as him to have the ancient contract book, and even the king of the nether mantises had become his. There must not be such a loophole in this life. Following that, Yi Chun ordered Xiao He to carry out the elite true policy and cultivate more nether mantises that were 1,000 feet long. He also had to station sentries everywhere in the passageway, making sure that the passageway was tightly guarded. He could not allow anyone to steal the eggs again. Xiao He also deeply agreed. He glanced at Yi Chun with hidden bitterness. This incident had almost left a psychological shadow on him. He definitely wouldn't let such a thing happen again. Yi Chun asked Xiao He again, "How big is the foggy swamp? Is there only the nether mantises? Have you seen any other creatures?" Xiao He immediately replied, "It's not the entire foggy swamp. In fact, it's divided into 3 regions: the outer region, the middle region, and the core region. The nether mantises are only in the outer region. The middle region is occupied by some damn nether knights. The nether mantises and the nether knights are mortal enemies, but they usually mind their own business. As for what's in the core region, no one knows." Yi Chun took a deep breath. He didn't expect that even though he and Xiaoxi had been fighting in the misty swamp for such a long time, they were still wandering around in the periphery. There were even more terrifying netherworld knights in the inner region. Who knew what else was in the core region? Yi Chun no longer had any hope that Xiaoxi's father would survive. Based on his understanding of the treasure-hunting psychic bird race, and Xiaoxi's father could not even pass the outer region before he was torn apart by the nether mantises. How about he go to the core region? Then, Yi Chun released Xiaoxi from the small world. When Xiaoxi saw the huge little black, she was so scared that her face changed color and she screamed. She nervously hid behind Yi Chun. However, after she screamed for a long time, she only saw Yi Chun looking at her quietly. Xiao He was also looking at Xiaoxi curiously, and Xiaoxi was confused. She stuttered and asked in disbelief, "Master, what's with this huge nether mantis? Was it their king? Why does it look so obedient? Why isn't it attacking us?" Yi Chun smiled. "Take a guess." And Xiaoxi was stunned. Then she asked in disbelief, "Master, have you already subdued him? How is that possible?" Yi Chun laughed and said, "That's not impossible. Blackie, come and say hello to your partner." Blackie immediately lowered his huge head and gently rubbed it against Xiaoxi's body. Then he laid down beside Yi Chun. His huge body was like a black hill, and Yi Chun was leaning against it. And Xiaoxi was even more surprised. She didn't expect her master to have such an ability. He had even subdued the Nether Mantis King. This was really hard to believe. Then, Xiaoxi's eyes lit up. She said in surprise, "Master, since you've already subdued the Nether Mantis King, the Nether Mantises outside won't attack us anymore, right? Does that mean we can directly enter the core area of the Foggy Swamp?" Yi Chun looked at Xiaoxi sympathetically. He sighed and said, "Xiaoxi, I've already spoken to Blackie with Blackie. Xiaoxi, I've talked to Blackie just now. In fact, we've been moving around the periphery of the Foggy Swamp for more than a month. We haven't entered the inner part of the Foggy Swamp yet. The Foggy Swamp is divided into 3 areas: the outer area, the middle area, and the core area. The Nether Mantises occupy the periphery and the core area. There are even more terrifying Nether Knights. As for the core area, we don't know what terrifying creatures there are. Do you think your father can enter the core area alone?" After hearing this, Xiaoxi's face turned pale. She sat on the ground and burst into tears. How could she not understand what Yi Chun meant? He had already implicitly told her that it was impossible for her father to pass through the periphery and the middle area of the Foggy Swamp. Yi Chun shook his head. Although this matter was very cruel, Xiaoxi had to learn to accept reality herself. After crying for a while, Xiaoxi suddenly got up and gave Yi Chun a few mouthfuls of water. She raised her head and said with a determined expression, "Master, thank you for taking care of me along the way. However, I still want to go to the core area to take a look. Even if there's only a 1 in a million chance, I want to see it with my own eyes. I want to make sure that my father is not trapped there. Master, I'll go on my own. If I'm lucky enough to survive and come back alive, I'll continue to serve you." After saying this, Xiaoxi stood up and continued to walk out without looking back. Yi Chun suddenly shouted coldly, "Stop! I'm your master now. Without my permission, you can't go anywhere." and Xiaoxi's footsteps immediately stopped. She slowly turned around and looked at Yi Chun with despair. It was indeed so. They had already signed a master-servant contract. Her life and death were in Yi Chun's hands. If Yi Chun did not agree, then Xiaoxi could not leave him at all. Yi Chun was not a cold-hearted person. He had seen in Xiaoxi's performance over the past month. She had done her best and never complained or felt tired. Every day, she would complete the tasks that Yi Chun assigned to her. This made Yi Chun have a whole new level of respect for her. After all, when he first met in Xiaoxi, she was still a rude and spoiled little girl. It was not easy for her to change like this. Seeing in Xiaoxi in so much pain, Yi Chun could not bear to see her like this. In the end, he sighed and said, "Fine, you stubborn girl. Seeing how filial you are, I'll risk my life to accompany you." After hearing this, and Xiaoxi's eyes lit up with joy. She immediately rushed over and grabbed Yi Chun's arm. With tears in her eyes, she asked, "Master, is what you said true? Thank you so much." Then, and Xiaoxi threw herself into Yi Chun's arms like a puppy. She kept rubbing her head against his chest. Yi Chun pushed him away and said angrily, "My clothes are wet from your tears. Let me make this clear first. Although I agree to help you go to the core area, there's a condition. You have to listen to my orders. Without my orders, you are not allowed to act on your own. Furthermore, you cannot disobey. When I order you to retreat, you have to follow my orders unconditionally. Do you understand?" And Xiaoxi took a deep breath and said resolutely, "Don't worry, Master. I understand. Although I've guessed that my father might not be around anymore, I won't be satisfied if I don't try. Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, then I'll give up." Chapter 1369. In that case, let's move on. Yi Chun rested for a while and continued to lead and Xiaoxi forward. Of course, after Yi Chun had subdued Blackie, the entire Nether Mantis territory had become his backyard. Yi Chun and Xiaoxi weren't the only ones on the road when they set off again. At this time, Yi Chun was sitting on a giant Nether Mantis, and Xiaoxi was sitting behind him. The giant Nether Mantis moved forward quickly and steadily. On both sides of it, there was a team of Nether Mantises more than 60 feet long guarding it. Only Blackie continued to stay in the cave. Because it had signed a contract with Yi Chun, all the Nether Mantises in the misty swamp obeyed Yi Chun's commands. Yi Chun immediately used his authority to recruit 1,200 Nether Mantises that were more than 60 meters long to serve as his Imperial Guards. The combat power of these Nether Mantises was not much different from the demon gods of the primeval continent. This was equivalent to Yi Chun leading 1,200 demon gods in the misty swamp. As for his mount, it was one of Blackie's guards and was more than 100 feet long. Now that Yi Chun was majestic, Yi Chun had also organized the 1,200 Nether Mantises into teams. 200 Nether Mantises would be the vanguard, 200 would be the left and right wings, and the rest would follow behind him. The Nether Mantises at the front had already taken the lead and were dozens of miles away from Yi Chun. They spread out in all directions and constantly transmitted the situation in front to Yi Chun's mind. Along the way, Yi Chun led the team like a locust swarm. Every time they came across a mineral deposit, Yi Chun would give the order, and the 1,000 Nether Mantises would immediately swarm forward. The mining speed of these Nether Mantises was insane. A rare mineral deposit with a yield of hundreds of tons could be completely mined in less than half a day. This efficiency was more than 100 times higher than when it was just him and Xiaoxi. And Xiaoxi was now completely free, and all she had to do was to sit on the giant Nether Mantis and try her best to use her abilities to discover the treasures and treasures that were hard to detect. In Yi Chun's small world, the blacksmiths were going crazy with joy. Recently, all kinds of rare minerals were falling from the sky like rain, forming mines one after another in the small world. What made them feel regretful was that the black iron essence and red copper essence that Yi Chun had provided at the beginning were very rare. The most important thing was that Little Black had pledged allegiance to Yi Chun. Naturally, Yi Chun would be too embarrassed to slaughter his people for the ores. Instead, It was replaced by an inexhaustible supply of rare minerals that had not undergone any processing. Yi Chun immediately ordered a group of blacksmiths to be specially trained in the small world to refine these minerals. The main thing was that they were now a little far from the Samsara dynasty. Yi Chun promised to send 100,000 blacksmiths to the small world when they returned to the Samsara dynasty. Along the way, Yi Chun walked and stopped. What made him most happy was that he had discovered several best-grade immortal stone veins. These things did not need to be refined again. He immediately commanded the nether mantises to dig out all the best-grade immortal stone veins. Suddenly, there were hundreds of millions of best-grade immortal stones in Yi Chun's storage. This made Yi Chun's cultivation progress 1,000 times a day, constantly strengthening his foundation. Yi Chun also felt that he was getting closer and closer to breaking through the Daluo Jinxian. Later, Yi Chun also discovered that these nether mantises had a very large appetite. An ordinary nether mantis with a body length of 200 feet could eat hundreds of kilograms of raw minerals every time. However, what made Yi Chun puzzled was that these nether mantises were like Pishio. He had only seen them eat, but had never seen them excrete. Only ingesting? There was once when Yi Chun had a wicked idea and ordered the nether mantises to eat non-stop. Even if they were full, he made them eat non-stop. In this way, these nether mantises swallowed thousands of kilograms of raw minerals in a day. Something unexpected happened. When these nether mantises could no longer eat, they suddenly excreted a few pieces of refined minerals the size of a fist from their back. This discovery made Yi Chun overjoyed. Finally, he found a good way to collect refined minerals without having to kill Blackie's people. Blackie's people were everywhere. Yi Chun immediately gathered 5,000 nether mantises at the last minute, brought them to a mining area rich in minerals, and then gave them a strict order. That was to eat. Eat nonstop. It was eating nonstop. Yi Chun conducted an experiment. These 5,000 nether mantises could provide more than 5,000 kilograms of refined minerals for Yi Chun every day. In other words, if one nether mantis ate nonstop, it could provide 1 kilogram of refined minerals. This ratio was relatively high. If it were to be refined by those blacksmiths, the ratio would not be so high. Then, Yi Chun specifically asked Xiaoxi to do this. He ordered Xiaoxi to ride the giant nether mantis around the periphery of the fog swamp to find the densely packed mining areas. Then, he left 5,000 nether mantises in each mining area to eat nonstop and provide refined minerals. Yi Chun gave Xiaoxi several cosmos rings with huge storage capacity. Each of them could hold hundreds of thousands of tons of refined minerals. Half a month later, Yi Chun accumulated a large amount of refined minerals once again. This time, the blacksmiths in the pocket world were overjoyed. As long as they had these refined minerals, they could continue to forge immortal artifacts. And now, Yi Chun's leisurely days had come to an end, because the environment up ahead had obviously changed greatly. In the periphery of the misty swamp, the first thing that could be seen was this kind of desolate mining area and precious ore veins that could be seen everywhere. However, after crossing a vast desert, what appeared before them was an endless prairie. According to the information provided by Blackie, the area up ahead was the territory of the Nether Knights. The Nether Knights and the Nether Mantises had always minded their own business. However, they were also mortal enemies. If the Nether Mantises were to cross the boundary, they would be attacked by the Nether Knights. Since Yi Chun had come, he didn't plan to coexist peacefully with the Netherworld Knights. He didn't believe that the Netherworld Knights wouldn't be able to deal with them. He directly controlled the 1,200 Netherworld Mantises to enter the Netherworld Knights' territory, the Black Grassland. However, after advancing for less than 50 li, the Nether Mantises in front suddenly sent a message. They had found the Nether Knights. Yi Chun immediately ordered them not to act rashly and not to alert the Nether Knights. In other words, they had to wait for him before making a decision. Chapter 1370. Although these Nether Mantises weren't very intelligent, they were still able to follow orders. Therefore, these nether mantises that were leading the charge all hid in the bushes and did not make any sound. When Yichen arrived, he immediately saw 3 black knights riding tall skeleton horses in front of him. Each of these skeletal horses was over 30 feet tall and 50 feet long. Their heads and forehooves were burning with black flames. Riding on these skeleton horses was a knight in full black armor. This kind of black armor was armed from head to toe. On the skeleton horses hung a 30-foot-long knight's spear and held a black longsword in their hands. They were cruising on the grassland in front of them. These nether knights were very strange. They had an evil aura and a deep aura. And Xiaoxi, who wasn't a creature from the Eldritch world, was instantly frightened. She subconsciously leaned on Yi Chun and whispered, "Master, these nether knights are so ugly." Yi Chun was stunned for a moment. He smiled and asked, "Am I ugly? Do you think these nether knights are uglier than the nether mantises?" And Xiaoxi nodded confidently. She patted the giant nether mantis under her and said, "Of course. Look at how cute my Xiaohua is. That damn thing is so much stronger." Yichen lowered his head and looked at the ferocious giant mantis. He was speechless. Although the hell mantis had become much more docile in front of them after they had been tamed, it was definitely not cute. Moreover, and Xiaoxi had actually named it Little Blossom. It was really disgusting. Then, he looked up at the 3 nether knights and sneered, "Now, let's see how strong these nether knights are." The spies that were sent out told Yichun that there were only these 3 nether knights within a radius of tens of miles. Since this was the case, Yichun didn't even bother to test them. He directly ordered 10 nether mantises to surround them. Then, they suddenly pounced out from the grass and attacked the 3 nether knights crazily. When a nether knight realized that these ghost mantises dared to cross the boundary, he immediately let out an angry roar. Without hesitation, he waved the black longsword in his hand and fought with the nether mantises. Yichen narrowed his eyes as he observed the battle. Soon after, he realized that these netherworld knights were not simple. Be it the strength of their charge or the angle and speed of their black longswords, they were much more powerful than the netherworld mantises. It was unknown what material the black longsword was made of, but it was extremely sharp. When it cut the nether mantis's body, it produced a violent roar. Every time it cut the nether mantis's body, a wound would be torn open. Fortunately, the nether mantises had the advantage in numbers. The 10 nether mantises took turns to attack the 3 nether knights without fear of death. Yichen could not understand their language, nor did he know what they were yelling about. However, from the looks of it, it was clear that the 10 hell mantises had the upper hand. Moreover, these nether mantises didn't care at all. Some attacked the nether knights, while others attacked the skeletal warhorses. One of the skeletal warhorse's front legs was directly chopped off by the nether mantis's huge blade-like arm. It only had 3 legs left, and it swayed as if it was going to fall at any time. The 10 nether mantis's attacks were even more frenzied. In less than 2 breaths, the 3 nether knights were pushed to the ground and mercilessly torn apart by the huge blade-like arms that filled the sky. Yichen noticed that when the 3 nether knights died, a white ball of light suddenly rose from their bodies and floated in the air. The nether mantises didn't even look at it. They directly pounced on the corpses of the nether knights and tore them apart crazily. The 3 skeletal warhorses and the 3 nether knights, along with the armor on their bodies, were quickly eaten up by the 10 nether mantises. When the nether mantises chewed on the knight's spear and the black longsword, the crunching sounds made Yichen shudder. These nether mantises' teeth were too good. Immediately after, he waved his hand, and the white ball of light immediately flew into his hand. Yi Chun analyzed it and found that the 3 white balls of light were actually pure energy. He seemed to feel a restless desire in his body. After checking again and again to make sure that there were no hidden dangers, Yi Chun tried to absorb the 3 white balls of light. After absorbing them, his body suddenly trembled and his eyes widened in surprise. This was because he found that after absorbing the 3 white balls of light, his cultivation and vitality didn't increase at all. However, The range of his divine sense expanded by 3 meters. This was really incredible. Yi Chen's divine sense hadn't increased for a long time. Originally, he thought that his divine sense would only increase again after breaking through to the Daluo Jinxian, after entering the fog swamp. Due to the unique laws of heaven and earth here, his divine sense was suppressed to the extreme and could only cover a very small range. Now that he absorbed the balls of light that the Nether Knights had exploded, his divine sense had miraculously expanded by 3 meters. Compared to the outside world where Yi Chen could easily cover hundreds of thousands of kilometers, it was really insignificant. However, no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. Moreover, this was just the beginning. Yi Chen couldn't help but look forward to it. If he killed 10,000 or even 100,000 Nether Knights, how much would his divine sense increase? At this moment, the 10 Nether Mantises had already devoured the Nether Knights. Suddenly, Yi Chen seemed to have an illusion. He found that the 10 Nether Mantises' bodies had actually grown by tens of centimeters. This was really an unexpected discovery. Yi Chen rubbed his eyes hard and looked carefully again. He found that he wasn't mistaken. The 10 Nether Mantises' bodies had indeed grown again. This discovery made Yi Chen laugh. It seemed that the Nether Knights were really full of treasures. Yi Chen already knew from Xiaohei that the growth of these Nether Mantises' bodies was too slow. If a 2-meter-long Nether Mantis wanted to grow to about 30 meters, it would take at least 100 years. Each of the 20-meter-long Nether Mantises around him had lived for more than 300 years. This was also because they had an inexhaustible supply of raw ores every day. He didn't expect that the 10 Nether Mantises would have such a significant growth after eating 3 Nether Knights. Chapter 1371. This discovery made Yi Chen a little high-spirited. If there were enough Netherworld Knights in this black grassland, and he commanded them well, it was very likely that he would be able to lead a super army of Netherworld Mantises. Imagine if he led 1,200 Netherworld Mantises that were more than 100 feet long on the battlefield. He would be able to kill anything that stood in his way. It was just a pity that he couldn't bring them out. It was better to be safe than sorry. Yi Chen didn't know the distribution of the Netherworld Knights in the Black Grassland, but he didn't dare to be careless. He didn't lead the 1,200 Netherworld Mantises directly into the grassland. Instead, he continued to send out the vanguard like before. They constantly scouted in all directions and then fed the information back to Yi Chen. In just an hour, Yi Chen knew the distribution of the Netherworld Knights within a radius of 200 miles. Most of them were in groups of 3 or 5. The largest group was made up of 100 Netherworld Knights. Under Yi Chen's command, these Netherworld Mantises all crouched close to the grass. For a moment, they weren't discovered by the Netherworld Knights. With these live radars, Yi Chen's next move was much more convenient. He immediately commanded his Netherworld Mantises to surround the Netherworld Knights who were still in the dark. To be safe, he still used a 3-1 battle strategy. For 3 Netherworld Knights, Yi Chen sent out 10 Netherworld Mantises to deal with them. For 5 Netherworld Knights, Yi Chen sent out 20 Netherworld Mantises to deal with them. For 10 Netherworld Knights, Yi Chen sent out 40 Netherworld Mantises to deal with them. As for the 100 Netherworld Knights, Yi Chen directly sent out 500 Netherworld Mantises to attack. And Yi Chen was like a military advisor in ancient times. He planned ahead and decided victory from 1,000 miles away. Next, he discovered a phenomenon. The more Netherworld Mantises there were, the more powerful they were. It wasn't as simple as 1 plus 1. For example, the 500 Netherworld Mantises were actually at a disadvantage against the 100 Netherworld Knights. Once the Netherworld Knights started charging, they were unstoppable. The rows of spears were like a forest of death. The Nether Mantises couldn't resist their charge. With just one charge, more than a dozen Nether Mantises were killed. If not for Yi Chen's timely arrival and personal intervention, Mantis would have suffered a great loss. Moreover, Yi Chen also came to the conclusion that he could only deal with 10 Netherworld Knights at once. If there were more, it would be difficult to deal with them. However, Yi Chun had too many magic treasures on him. Even if he couldn't defeat them directly, with the help of those magic treasures, he could trap them together. After half a day, all the Nether Knights within a radius of 200 miles were killed. Yi Chun then took stock of his losses. In this battle, Yi Chun had lost a total of 38 Nether Mantises and 450 Nether Knights. After devouring all the Nether Knights, skeletal warhorses, and their equipment, the Nether Mantises' bodies grew by tens of centimeters. Some of the more talented ones even grew by half a meter. An increase in body size represented an increase in strength. As for Yi Chun, after absorbing all 450 white balls of light, his divine sense had grown significantly. The range of his divine sense had also expanded by 450 meters. This was a good start. Yi Chun also reformulated his strategy. He wanted to be foolproof. The next time he encountered more than 100 Netherworld Knights, he would kill them all. This would be safer. As for more than 200 Netherworld Knights, he wouldn't fight them head-on. He wouldn't use any methods to harass, snipe, or split them up. And Xiaoxi now admired Yi Chun from the bottom of her heart. Not only did Yi Chun have endless tricks up his sleeve, but he also knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Yi Chun had been in the Black Grassland for half a month. During this time, the entire Black Grassland had been turned upside down by Yi Chun. These Spectre Knights also understood that a despicable team of Hell Mantises had invaded the Black Grassland. The commander of these Nether Mantises was simply despicable to the extreme. He had adopted some tactics that the Netherworld Mantises had never imagined. They didn't fight the large-scale Netherworld Knights head-on at all. Instead, they used some despicable methods to divide the Netherworld Knights into several small teams and then surround and annihilate them. The leader of the Nether Knights flew into a rage. He immediately ordered several teams of over 1,000 Nether Knights to sweep the Black Grassland. They had to find a team of Ghost Mantises. During this half a month, Yi Chun and his Nether Mantis team had also gained a lot. Yi Chun's divine sense had now increased by more than 5,000 meters. There were still more than 1,100 Netherworld Mantises left. Now, the smallest Netherworld Mantis was more than 300 feet tall, and some had even reached 400 feet tall. After a series of battles, their combat strength had also improved by leaps and bounds. It had to be said that Yi Chun's talent in languages was very impressive. During this period of time, he had been constantly exploring and probing, and he had already learned the language of the Netherworld Knights. Yi Chun had once captured a few Netherworld Knights for interrogation. However, these low-level Netherworld Knights only knew how to kill and some simple passwords. And Xiaoxi, bring a pair of Netherworld Mantises out and capture a tongue for me. We have to figure out the total number of Netherworld Knights in the Black Grassland and where their nest is. Now that the Netherworld Mantis' strength had improved, Yi Chun no longer wanted to continue hiding. Instead, he wanted to directly attack their nest. Yes, master. After following Yi Chun and killing for days, and Xiaoxi, a non-combat pet, actually had a layer of iron and blood on her body. Her movements were valiant and heroic. Yi Chun didn't have to wait too long before Xiaoxi returned. She clearly had the aura of a battle on her body. On the body of a Netherworld Mantis, there was a Netherworld Knight that was tied up like a dumpling. The Netherworld Knight was tightly bound by iron chains that were as thick as an arm. There was no way for him to break free. And Xiaoxi kicked the Netherworld Mantis off and dragged the chain to Yi Chun's side. She said sweetly, "Master, this guy is the leader of a pair of Netherworld Knights. He's also a little cunning. If I wasn't smart enough, he would have escaped. Good girl, you did a great job." Chapter 1372. In the face of Xiaoxi's behavior, Yi Chun merely smiled. Then, he stretched out his hand and stroked Xiaoxi's hair as if he was petting a pet. And Xiaoxi squinted her eyes in enjoyment, just like a kitten. Then, Yi Chun gave her another 10 nether fruits, causing Xiaoxi to smile happily. Yi Chun stood up and walked to the side of the Netherworld Knight. He looked down at the Netherworld Knight. The Netherworld Knight was still struggling. The black flames on its body continued to burn. Yichen noticed that the Netherworld Knight was bigger than an ordinary Netherworld Knight. The color of its black armor was also darker. Even the black flames on its body burned more fiercely. Yichen coldly said in the language of the Netherworld Knights, "Don't struggle. Save your strength. If you can break free from these iron chains, then my blacksmiths might as well buy a block of tofu and kill themselves. By the way, you can understand my language, right?" After hearing Yi Chen's words, the Netherworld Knight's body suddenly froze. He was in disbelief. Although he didn't have pupils, the flames in his eye sockets suddenly shrunk. He seemed to have encountered something unbelievable. Then he roared in a hoarse and cold voice, "Damned intruder! How do you know my language?" Yichen ignored his question and coldly said, "Don't talk nonsense. Let me ask you, how many Netherworld Knights are there in the Black Grassland? Where are they located? How are their strengths divided? Also, where's your base?" The Netherworld Knight let out a hoarse laugh. "It's impossible for me to betray my race. Don't think you can get any useful information from me." Yichen took a step back. He snapped his fingers and said, "Very good. You are indeed a tough nut to crack. I already expected it. I didn't expect you to do it. Just tell me honestly. You monsters refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Hey, you guys can eat now." Following Yi Chen's order, for Netherworld mantises impatiently surrounded the Netherworld Knight. They opened their ferocious mouths and began to bite the Netherworld Knight. It was unknown whether he could feel pain or not, but the Netherworld Knight remained calm. Even when his arms and legs were being chewed, the Netherworld Knight still clenched his teeth and roared angrily. These Netherworld mantises had excellent teeth. In less than 15 minutes, the Netherworld Knight had been chewed until only his head was left. Even so, the Netherworld Knight was still breathing. Yichen couldn't help but sigh at the tenacity of these fellows. Yichen squatted down and looked coldly at the Netherworld Knight. The head was still roaring, "Invaders, you are dead meat. My king has already given the order to find you damned ants, even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground. I guarantee that you are all dead meat." Yichen said with great interest, "Not simple. You can even say something like dig 3 feet into the ground. It seems that your intelligence is much higher than the Netherworld mantises. But I'm very curious. With your strength, if you invaded the Netherworld mantises' territory in large numbers, they would have been destroyed by you. Why haven't you done anything yet?" The head said contemptuously, "These stinky praying mantises are all brainless idiots who only know how to kill. Killing them won't do us any good, and they don't have anything worth plotting against. What's more, with these idiots blocking the way, they can save us a lot of unnecessary trouble. Why should we kill them? Invader, where did you come from? Why would these idiots listen to your orders?" Yichen exhaled and said coldly, "You worry too much. Since you don't want to tell me, let me see it for myself." After saying that, Yichen directly stretched out his hand and patted on the top of the head. Then, Yichen's huge divine sense rushed into the head of the Nether Mantis unreasonably. It penetrated through every nook and cranny of the Nether Mantis's head quickly, then dissected its memory. Yichen was going to use the Great Soul Searching technique. Although the vast majority of the victims would turn into idiots after using the Great Soul Searching technique, what did it matter? The head obviously realized what Yi Chen was going to do. It roared in horror, trying to resist Yi Chen's invasion. Unfortunately, Yi Chen's divine sense was too powerful. Even if it was suppressed here, it still wasn't something that the Netherworld Knight could resist. In an instant, all the defensive lines collapsed, and Yi Chen easily invaded the deepest memory region of the Netherworld Knight. The flames in the Netherworld Knight's eyes gradually extinguished, and its roaring stopped. Yi Chen's face became a little gloomy. In the Netherworld Knight's memories, he was only ordered to patrol an area and kill all invaders. He was not very clear about the layout and strength of the Netherworld Knight clan. The level of this Netherworld Knight captain was too low, and the things he knew were too limited. If Yi Chen wanted to get more information, he would have to capture more spies. It would be best if they were of a higher level. Yi Chen straightened his back and kicked the Netherworld Knight's head away. Then a netherworld mantis jumped out and swallowed it. Yichen looked into the distance and narrowed his eyes. The most useful information he got from the netherworld knight was that their headquarters seemed to be diagonally to his right. Moreover, Yichun keenly noticed that in the nether mantis's memory, there seemed to be a memory that had been sealed. It was vague and unclear, and there seemed to be a huge altar somewhere in that memory. Some black netherworld energy was constantly emerging from those altars, and the netherworld mantis clan also seemed to be holding a huge ceremony. This altar was still being constantly perfected, and the scene came to an abrupt end. Yichen could not help but laugh. What was this? A weird altar? Could it be that the Netherworld Knight clan was going to open the Netherworld Gate and invade the chaotic continent? Obviously, it was impossible. With Xiao Hei's explanation, these creatures in the foggy swamp could not leave the foggy swamp at all. Otherwise, they would immediately explode. Moreover, Yichen's memories from his previous life also prove this point. At that time, he had never heard of any creatures escaping from the Netherworld swamp, and there was no large-scale attack by the Netherworld race. However, Yichen was still a little curious. He wanted to see what these Netherworld race were up to. Chapter 1373. Yichen turned his head and looked at the army of black hell mantises behind him. He was in high spirits as he flipped over and mounted the giant hell mantis. He pointed the god-slaying spear in his hand forward and roared, "From now on, follow me and continue forward. We're going to fight head-on." At this moment, Yichun finally revealed his true strength. This was the result of his constant practice and experimentation. Among the many magic treasures he possessed, only the Grade 12 World Black Lotus could truly adapt to the laws of the Misty Swamp. It was not suppressed at all. The other magic treasures were suppressed to varying degrees. Yichen's World Black Lotus was the only one that could truly adapt to the laws of the Misty Swamp. Yichen's Black Lotus of Destruction emitted a black circular chi wall that enveloped all the nether mantises. In an instant, the defense of these nether mantises increased by more than tenfold. With the protection of the Black Lotus of Destruction, these nether mantises didn't need to worry about the nether knights at their current stage. More importantly, the Black Lotus of Destruction was both offensive and defensive. While it provided defense, the Hell Mantises also provided some offensive power. The blades of the Hell Mantises became fiercer and sharper. Moreover, there was a trace of the aura of the Black Lotus of Destruction on them. As long as they tore a wound on the Hell Knights, the aura of the Black Lotus of Destruction would instantly rush in and destroy the Hell Knights. It was also from this moment onwards that the Netherworld Knights suffered a calamity. In just a single day of practice, they had lost more Netherworld Knights than they had in half a month of observation. Rumble! The thunderous sound of horse hooves came from afar. A group of 5,000 Hell Knights was approaching from afar. Right now, Yichun could only see a thick black line in front of him. Moreover, this black line was getting thicker and thicker. These Hell Knights were all wearing thick armor. The spears in their hands were lowered very low. It was like a forest of death. The spears of the Hell Knights had a chilling light that made people's hearts palpitate. Not only did these Hell Knights have an imposing aura, but their size had also increased to varying degrees. They were about the same as the captain of the Hell Knights that Yichun had captured. The sound of horse hooves was like thunder, and the ground began to shake violently. Facing this kind of collective charge of thousands of soldiers and horses, anyone would feel timid and terrified. It was as if they were facing a monstrous wave in the ocean. An individual was too insignificant in front of this kind of collective charge. Yichen's expression was cold as he stood at the front of the team. He knew that as long as the Netherworld Knights were slowed down, it would be time for the Netherworld Mantises to attack. Today, I will lead the charge. Yichen suddenly soared into the sky, and the soul-devouring spear in his hand emitted a dazzling light. Just when the Netherworld Knights were a mile away from him, a sharp green spear light suddenly appeared out of thin air. Boom! With a deafening boom, the Netherworld Knights in front of them were thrown off their feet, and their charging momentum was halted. The Netherworld Knights at the back didn't have time to stop in time, and they crashed into the Netherworld Knights in front of them, causing them to collapse. As for the Netherworld Mantises, after receiving Yi Chen's order, they launched a frenzied attack. These Netherworld Mantises, with an average length of 400 feet, were like hungry wolves that had been starved for 3 days. They bared their ferocious claws and fangs from all directions. With the enhancement of the Black Lotus of Destruction, not only was their defense incomparably abnormal, but their attack power was also incomparably sharp. Kacha, a Netherworld Mantis's huge blade, was like a guillotine that was 10 feet long. It directly chopped off the head of a Netherworld Knight, and then swallowed the head in one gulp. A Netherworld Knight let out an angry roar, turned around, and stabbed the neck of the nearest Netherworld Mantis with a spear. The Netherworld Mantis was only forced to take 2 steps back. It swung its neck as if nothing had happened. It roared and pounced forward, pouncing on the Netherworld Knight and its horse. Its ferocious mouth snapped the Netherworld Knight's neck in one bite. Such a scene was happening everywhere. Yi Chen was not to be outdone. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, the Godslayer in his hand was as fast as lightning. Every spear strike was able to pierce the head of a Netherworld Mantis. The reason why the Godslayer's attack power had become so sharp was that after continuous practice, the Godslayer's spear skills had been upgraded again. The team of Netherworld Mantises, led by Yi Chen, was like wrapping dumplings. They ruthlessly surrounded the team of 5,000 Netherworld Knights. After a bloody battle, this team of Netherworld Knights was completely annihilated. Not a single one of them survived. The incomparably ferocious giant Netherworld Mantises were constantly patrolling the battlefield. When they saw that the Netherworld Knights were not completely dead, they immediately went up and bit off their heads. After making sure that no one was lucky enough to survive, these Netherworld Mantises began to enjoy their feast in peace. Meanwhile, Yi Chen directly swallowed all the balls of light. It was worth mentioning that the balls of light that these Netherworld Knights had dropped were no longer completely white. They had been upgraded to orange. These balls of light contained more and purer energy. Every orange ball of light was equivalent to 2 white balls of light. After Yi Chen swallowed these 5,000 orange balls of light, his divine sense expanded by another 10,000 meters. Only Xiaoxi followed behind Yi Chen. She sat quietly on the giant Netherworld Mantis with her eyes closed. She did not want to see this bloody scene. Instead, she peacefully absorbed the pure energy within the high-grade immortal stones to strengthen her foundation bit by bit. She could not devour the flesh and armor of these Netherworld Knights like the Netherworld Mantises, nor could she absorb the white balls of light like Yi Chen. The environment here did not benefit her at all. However, Xiaoxi's strength had improved very quickly. She could also absorb the energy within the immortal stones to cultivate. Unfortunately, Yi Chen had recently become a nouveau riche. He had obtained a large amount of high-grade and supreme-grade immortal stones by commanding these Netherworld Mantises. With a wave of his hand, Yi Chen took out 50 million high-grade immortal stones and gave them to Xiaoxi. This greatly moved Xiaoxi. What was more worth mentioning was that Yi Chen was quite satisfied with her. He had directly passed the Green Lotus Sword Art to Xiaoxi. Therefore, Xiaoxi's combat strength had improved by leaps and bounds. The more she comprehended the Green Lotus Sword Art, the more she felt that the Green Lotus Sword Art was unfathomable. At the same time, Xiaoxi now respected Yi Chen like a god. The Netherworld Mantis's ability to clean up the battlefield was simply abnormal. In just 15 minutes, the 5,000 Netherworld Knights and skeletal warhorses had been completely devoured by them. At this time, these Netherworld Mantises still carried the aura of the Black Lotus of Destruction, making them ferocious and terrifying. Chapter 1374. Rumble. The earth shook and the mountains shook. Sand and dust covered the sky. Yi Chen led the charge with a murderous look on his face. In front of him was a troop of 10,000 Netherworld Knights. The troop of netherworld mantises, led by Yi Chun, was fighting desperately with the netherworld mantises. Another 10 days had passed. Yi Chun only had 900 netherworld mantises left. However, these 900 netherworld mantises were already more than 1,500 feet in size. The netherworld mantis that Yi Chun had been riding was already more than 3,000 feet in size. The increase in size brought a huge increase in combat power. Coupled with the boost from the grade 12 Black Lotus of Annihilation, the 10,000 Nether Riders were all killed in less than an hour. And Xiaoxi, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately jumped out. With a wave of her small hand, she immediately stored the corpses of the 5,000 Netherworld Knights into her interspatial ring. Then, Xiaoxi nodded and said, "Okay, you can divide the rest. Don't waste them." The netherworld mantises that had been waiting quietly at the side immediately swarmed forward and devoured the remaining 5,000 netherworld knights and the skeletal warhorses that had been killed. This was the decision that Yi Chun had made 3 days ago. He would only allow the netherworld mantises to devour half of the spoils. The remaining half would be stored first. A portion would be brought back to Blackie. After all, he had to consolidate his position as the king of the netherworld mantises. The other portion would be stored by Yi Chun. He had decided to bring a portion of the netherworld mantis eggs out. If they could really survive outside, the corpses of the netherworld knights would be food for the netherworld mantises to grow quickly. As the captured tongues became more and more advanced, Yi Chun also learned from the netherworld knights that there were tens of millions of netherworld knights in the central area of the foggy swamp. There was indeed a mysterious altar in their nest. As long as they could activate this group, the army of the netherworld would be able to march straight in and invade the primitive continent through the foggy swamp. They were just the vanguard of the netherworld army. At this moment, they were trapped in the foggy swamp. As for whether or not the netherworld's army could leave the foggy swamp, these nether knights did not know. It seemed that the netherworld's high priest would solve this problem. Since he had caught up to them, Yi Chun had no reason to let them go. He decided to head straight for the Nether Knight's lair. Moreover, Yi Chun's strategy was to use battle to support battle. Along the way, they constantly fought with these Netherworld Knights and killed them to feed the Netherworld Mantises. The Netherworld Mantises' growth rate could be said to be terrifying. If all the Nether Mantises that were more than 150 feet long joined forces, it would be a disaster. The Nether Knights could not break through the defense of the Nether Mantis at all. Even the Nether Mantis' sharp arm blades, which were more than 10 feet long, could take away the life of a Nether Knight with each attack. Unless there were more than 100,000 Nether Knights, they would not be a threat to Yi Chun at all. However, Yi Chun's divine sense could now successfully cover a radius of 100 miles. Nothing could escape his notice. Once he discovered a large-scale troop of more than 100,000 Nether Knights, Yi Chun would immediately lead these Nether Mantises away. Hide from them. Once he detected a troop of a few thousand or 10,000 Nether Knights, Yi Chun would immediately lead the Nether Mantises to devour them with the force of a thunderbolt. However, this method could work in the beginning. The closer they got to the Nether Knight's lair, the more difficult it became. Basically, there were no troops with less than 100,000 Nether Knights. Troops of more than 100,000 Nether Knights were constantly patrolling around the Nether Knight's lair. Every time a troop was attacked, they would immediately send out a signal, and the other troops would immediately come to their aid. And Xiaoxi and Yi Chun stood on a high hill and looked down at the dense patrol troops. And Xiaoxi frowned and said, "Master, what should we do? These Nether Knights are patrolling too densely. I'm afraid that once we start fighting, we won't have time to leave. I'm afraid we will be surrounded in less than 15 minutes." Yi Chun's gaze looked across the grassland in the distance. He could sense that there were many small troops of about 10,000 people outside. Hence, he snorted and said, "Since that's the case, let's clean up these troops outside the Nether Knight's lair first." Then, the Nether Mantis' troops immediately hid in all directions. It was worth mentioning that the Nether Mantis' stealth ability was already quite powerful. When they hid their tracks, they were like ghosts in the dark, undetectable. When they appeared less than 300 meters away, It was already too late for the Nether Knights to escape. At this moment, there was a sinister hall in the lair of the Nether Knights. This hall was made of nether magic stones, and it was hundreds of meters tall. It was squarish and looked like a giant coffin. There were 500,000 Nether Knights surrounding this hall. These Nether Knights were all elites among elites. Even the skeletal warhorses and the armor of these Nether Knights were extremely luxurious. They didn't dare to slack off for a moment. Their vigilant gazes locked down the void around them. Even if they were invisible, they couldn't escape. In the Nether Hall, an old man covered in a black robe and with only a pair of red eyes was furious. In front of him, two petite black-robed men were kneeling. One of the black-robed men reported with a slightly hoarse voice, "Lord Priest, we have to think of a way. Those despicable and shameless fellows are constantly hunting down our troops of less than 100,000 people outside. From the beginning until now, they have already killed 1 or 2 million Nether Knights. In the long run, we will only have 1 million troops left guarding the main camp. The rest will be slowly eaten up by those damned Nether Mantises." The black-robed man called the priest roared angrily, "Those damned brainless Nether Mantises. Why did they suddenly attack us? Such a big move and such a shameless method is definitely not a decision made by those brainless Nether Mantises. They are being controlled." The black-robed priest hit the nail on the head. Then the black-robed priest said coldly, "Chilean snake, poison scorpion, I order the two of you to lead an army of 200,000. You must find those damned ants and tear them into pieces. If the two of you can't do it, you could die outside." Chapter 1375. Chilean snake and poison scorpion immediately shivered. They immediately prostrated themselves on the ground and quickly said, "Please don't worry, Lord Priest. The two of us will definitely capture that damned ant and tear him into pieces." After saying that, Chilean snake and poison scorpion didn't dare to delay. They immediately turned around and quickly left the nest of the underworld knight. Once they were far away, the black-robed priest slowly turned around. He extended his left hand and pressed it down. Suddenly, the entire hall began to tremble. Then, a staircase that could only allow one person to walk down appeared under his feet. The black-robed priest walked down the stairs step by step. Behind him, the entrance of the tunnel immediately closed again. From the outside, one couldn't see anything strange. Following the black-robed priest's footsteps, a row of arm-sized candles would automatically light up wherever he walked. The entire underground was brightly lit. It was obvious that there was another world underground. It was much more spacious than the main camp above. This underground palace was made of black magic stones. There was nothing below. However, in the center of the palace, there was a huge and broken altar. This altar had clearly been severely damaged. However, it still emitted a heavy and terrifying aura. It was as if on the other side of the altar, there were countless terrifying demons eyeing it covetously. They were going to cross over through the altar at any time to drink blood and kill to their heart's content. The black-robed priest had a sickly look on his face. He gently pressed his face against the surface of the altar. It was as if he was carefully listening to the roars and cheers of the other world. Then the black-robed priest stood up and opened his hands. His eyes were filled with fanaticism. He coldly said to himself, soon, as long as I have enough time, I will definitely be able to repair this altar. When that time comes, the great priest will bring millions of underworld army and kill their way into this world. Although we are useless and are temporarily trapped in this foggy swamp, I believe the great priest will definitely have a way to lead us out. When that time comes, my underworld army will sweep across the world and turn this rich land into a colony of the underworld world. After venting, the black-robed priest began to repair the altar bit by bit. If Ichin were here, he would have laughed out loud. This was because from his technique, this black-robed priest was clearly a layman. The patterns of the array he repaired seemed to be right, but they were actually wrong. Many of them were the opposite of the original structure. If this altar was injected with energy, it would be heaven-defying if it did not explode. In fact, the black-robed priest couldn't do anything about it. He was still in the process of trying to figure it out. The array masters that followed him had already died in the process. As for the Netherworld Knights, they weren't suited for such a task. Only the black-robed priests with the highest intellect could handle it personally. However, the black-robed priest still felt that he had done a good job. He proudly muttered to himself, "I told you, this old man is definitely a genius. It's just a mere array formation. This old man knows it all by himself. Once the altar is repaired, the high priest will definitely reward me. This rich land, this old man, is getting a little impatient from waiting." Qilian Snake and Poison Scorpion were the two commanders of the Underworld army. The two of them stood outside the nest with 200,000 Underworld Knights with a bitter expression. Poison Scorpion coldly said, "Great priest, it's easy for you to say. The territory of the Netherworld Knights is more than 10 million miles. According to the information we received, there are only about 1,000 of those damned Netherworld Mantises invaders. They come and go like the wind and can even hide. In such a large territory, it's harder to find them than finding a rock in the river Styx." Qilian Snake turned his head and looked at him with a frightened expression. He then said in a low voice, "You better stop complaining. If the great priest hears you, he will skin you alive and burn you in the netherworld fire for 10,000 years. Since the great priest has ordered us to do it, no matter if we can catch those damned invaders or not, we will do our best. If the great priest is still not satisfied, we will ask him to do it himself. I don't think he can say anything." Poison Scorpion nodded and said in agreement, "You are so cunning. This is a good idea. Then let's do it this way. Should we go with 2 teams, or should we each lead 100,000 men and move separately?" "Let's move separately. According to our information, there are too few of these damned invaders. They have never encountered a patrol team with more than 100,000 men. Even if we accidentally encounter them, we are not afraid." Therefore, at this moment, Poison Scorpion and Qilian Snake immediately went their separate ways and swept in different directions. The men they led were the elites of the Netherworld Knights. Every skeleton horse was more than 20 feet tall. The knight spears in their hands were more than 15 feet long. As the 100,000 Netherworld Knights galloped on their horses, the entire land shook violently. Both Poison Scorpion and Qilian Snake were hoping for fluke. If they encountered the invading Netherworld Mantises, then they would have made a great contribution. Recently, the black-robed Great Priest had been racking his brains for them. He was not worried that they would not be able to defeat them. In their opinion, an army of 100,000 Netherworld Knights against less than 1,000 Netherworld Mantises was a huge disparity in strength. There was no suspense at all. However, what they did not know was that the smallest Netherworld Mantis under Yi Chen's command was close to 3,000 feet in size. These skeleton knights were like huge ants in front of the Netherworld Mantises. While the two teams were constantly searching for Yi Chen was sitting cross-legged on the back of the giant Netherworld Mantis. He closed his eyes and carefully sensed the energy fluctuations in his body. He did not know how many energy balls he had devoured from the Netherworld Knights. His divine sense had skyrocketed. Not only did it allow him to expand his detection range, but it also allowed him to have a clearer understanding of himself. He constantly mobilized the energy in his body and made some slight changes. The advantage of this was that Yi Chen's attacks were more powerful, but the energy consumption was lower. Recently, Yi Chen had consumed hundreds of millions of top-grade immortal stones. His body had also condensed a huge amount of energy. After such a long period of accumulation, Yi Chen felt that his strength had reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. He seemed to be only one step away from the Daluo Jinxian. Perhaps he would only be able to find the opportunity to break through after a hearty battle. Yi Chen opened his eyes and looked at the Netherworld Mantises who were constantly cleaning the battlefield. He instantly made a decision. He could not continue to beat around the bush with these Netherworld Knights. He chose to go straight in and fight them head-on. Chapter 1376. At this moment, These nether mantises were all around 3,000 feet in size. If the Netherworld Knights wanted to kill them, they would have to pay a price 100 times more. On the other hand, the nether mantis that Yi Chun was sitting on was over 6,000 feet in size. It wasn't too far off from Little Black. Yi Chun had already accumulated over 800,000 Netherworld Knight corpses in his universe ring. Right at this moment, Yi Chun's eyes suddenly lit up. This was because a group of over 100,000 Netherworld Knights had suddenly entered the range of his divine sense. Yi Chun immediately smiled when he saw that they were rushing towards this place. It was really like someone giving him a pillow just as he was about to doze off. He had just made up his mind to clash with these groups of over 100,000 Netherworld Knights when another group appeared right away. Furthermore, this place was still in the periphery of the Netherworld Knights' nest. There wouldn't be any other groups coming over in time. This was really a good opportunity to practice. As such, Yi Chun immediately made arrangements. He set up an ambush along the path that the Netherworld Knights had to pass through. The place that Yi Chun had chosen was a huge canyon. On the other side of the canyon, Yi Chun had already ordered the nether mantises to block off the path with boulders that weighed tens of tons. Right now, this canyon had become a long pocket-shaped trap, waiting for the Netherworld Knights who didn't need scouts to walk right into it. Yi Chun wasn't worried that the Netherworld Knights would take a detour. This was the path that they had to pass through. Moreover, there were steep mountains on both sides of the canyon. If the Netherworld Knights wanted to continue forward, they would have to pass through this canyon. The nether mantises were all hidden on both sides of the canyon. Their huge blades flickered with a cold light, ready to devour anyone at any time. Yi Chun directly ordered them to enter stealth mode. They were just waiting to be caught. Not long after, the rumbling of thunder could be heard in the distance. 100,000 Netherworld Knights were charging together. This scene was extremely shocking. Even the rocks in the canyon were shaking. And Xiaoxi's pretty face was a little pale, and she tugged at the corner of Yi Chun's shirt in a reserved manner. Yi Chun turned around and comforted her. "Don't worry. It's just a small matter. When I first brought the Samsara dynasty to the untainted land, tens of millions of demons attacked the sacred city of Samsara at the same time. This is just a small matter." During this period of time, Yi Chun had mentioned something about the Samsara dynasty to Xiaoxi intentionally or unintentionally, and Xiaoxi was also fascinated by it. Yi Chun mentioned the Samsara dynasty again. And Xiaoxi said softly at once, "Master, when will you take me back to the Samsara dynasty? I also want to meet those female masters." Yi Chun suddenly laughed and said, "It won't take long. After I break through the Daluo Jinxian, I'll take you back to see them. Speaking of which, I haven't seen them for a long time." While Yi Chun was talking and laughing with Xiaoxi, the team of Netherworld Knights had already rushed into the canyon. After entering the canyon, this team had no intention of slowing down at all. They whizzed past as fast as lightning. Rumble! The canyon was about 50 kilometers long. The team in front was about to reach the exit, while the team behind had just entered the canyon. Yi Chun's eyes gradually turned sharp. The moment the last team entered the canyon, Yi Chun's eyes turned sharp. As soon as the order was given, hundreds of boulders weighing tens of tons rolled down the valley with a rumble, blocking the entrance once again. It was Poison Scorpion's team. When Poison Scorpion heard the thunderous sound of falling rocks behind him, he instinctively felt that something was wrong. Before he could send people to investigate, two Netherworld Knights who looked like squad leaders rushed over with panicked expressions. They reported, "Lord Commander, it seems that we've been ambushed. The exit has been blocked, and our entrance has also been blocked by some huge meteorites. What should we do?" After Poison Scorpion heard this, he immediately roared in exasperation. "What do you mean it seems like we've been ambushed? We've been ambushed from the start. This is the damned invaders' scheme. Inform everyone to prepare for battle. Find the damned invaders and crush them." At this moment, the Netherworld mantises that had been lying in ambush for a long time descended from the sky like tigers into a flock of sheep. They landed in the middle of the team of Netherworld Knights. Their huge blade-like arms that were more than 30 meters long spun, and dozens of Netherworld Knights' heads fell to the ground. Their headless corpses immediately fell from their netherworld warhorses. The skeletal warhorses stood there in a daze. In the blink of an eye, their bodies were cut in half by the huge netherworld mantises. In just a breath's time, more than 10,000 netherworld knights had been killed. The main reason was that the team of netherworld knights was too densely packed, and they were all confined to this narrow canyon. They were squeezed together like cans of meat. Their biggest advantage was that they couldn't charge in groups. They could only be killed by the netherworld mantises. However, these netherworld knights weren't afraid of death. Although they couldn't form an effective charge, they still raised their knight spears and launched a death charge at the netherworld mantises. But all of this was futile. Not to mention this, the netherworld mantises' defense was extremely abnormal after their bodies exceeded 300 meters in size. In addition to the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction, these ordinary netherworld knights couldn't break through their defense. The commander of the netherworld knights, Poison Scorpion, roared in exasperation. Damn it! Why are these netherworld mantises so big? He looked around and saw the netherworld knights falling to the ground like dumplings. He was infuriated. He jumped up crazily, and the knight's spear in his hand emitted a black light. It directly pierced through the thigh of a netherworld mantis. The netherworld mantis staggered, and its huge head was chopped off by Poison Scorpion. Poison Scorpion raised his knight's spear and roared crazily, trying to raise his morale. However, he was targeted by Yi Chen. Yi Chen's eyes emitted 2 rays of cold light. Since these netherworld mantises advanced to around 300 meters in size, they basically didn't suffer any damage. He didn't expect that Poison Scorpion would kill one of them. This made Yi Chen furious. These netherworld mantises were the result of his blood, sweat, and tears. Every one of them was incomparably precious. He sneered, "I didn't expect there to be a big guy among these idiots. Let me deal with you." Then, Yi Chen's figure flashed and appeared above Poison Scorpion. The Godslayer in his hand carried a thunderous aura of death as it enveloped Poison Scorpion. Chapter 1377. Poison Scorpion felt an extremely terrifying aura in an instant. He suddenly screamed, "It's you, damn intruder! You're the one who's controlling these stupid nether mantises, aren't you?" The corner of Yi Chen's mouth revealed a trace of a cold smile. "We caught a big fish." Then, a terrifying pressure enveloped Poison Scorpion. Yi Chen's Godslayer fell like raindrops. Yi Chen originally thought that since Poison Scorpion was a commander of the Nether Knights, he might be able to hone his combat skills. However, he never expected that Poison Scorpion would be so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. After 100 rounds of battle, Poison Scorpion fell to the ground with a plop. His body was surrounded by purple lightning as he rolled and howled in pain. Yi Chen also did not expect the Imperial Lightning Art to be so lethal to Poison Scorpion. Yi Chen snorted coldly. He stepped forward and stepped on Poison Scorpion's neck. Then, he interrogated, "Don't you Nether Knights like to hide in your nest like turtles? Why did you bring 100,000 men to chase after me?" Poison Scorpion was even more cowardly than expected. He immediately cried and said, "My lord, we didn't want to. This was completely under the orders of our black-robed priest. We must find you when we come out." "Is the black-robed priest your leader? How many of you are there in total? Where did you come from? Why are you hiding in this foggy swamp? What's your conspiracy?" Since he could not hold on from the beginning, Poison Scorpion did not hide anything. He began to confess, "Of course, we're from the Nether Realm. Because the High Priest discovered the coordinates of this chaotic world, he built an altar. 10 million of us Nether Knights were to be the vanguard of the teleportation. Who knew that an accident would happen during the teleportation process? The altar has completely collapsed, and we're completely trapped in the foggy swamp. As soon as we step out of the swamp, we'll immediately self-destruct." Yi Chen thought for a moment and continued to ask, "Since you guys are trapped in the misty swamp and can't get out, why do I hear that you guys are constantly repairing the altar? Are you guys thinking of going home?" Poison Scorpion continued to speak honestly. "That's not it. The black-robed priest said that although he didn't have a way to prevent us from self-destructing when we leave the misty swamp, the high priest would definitely be able to handle it. As long as the altar is repaired and the high priest is brought here, we will definitely be able to successfully find a way to enter the chaos world. Yichun narrowed his eyes when he heard this. Although Yichun had never heard of the Netherworld invasion in his previous life, he had never heard of it. It was enough to show that the altar could not be repaired, or even if it was repaired, the high priest would still not have a way to leave the Netherworld swamp. But no matter which possibility it was, this hidden danger had not been completely resolved. If they really found a way to invade the untainted world one day, the inhabitants of the untainted world would suffer. If only the demon tribe suffered, it would be pardonable. However, if the demons from the nether realm invaded after Goddess Nviwa succeeded in creating humans, the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Thinking of this, Yichun's eyes flashed with a cold light. It was fine if he didn't know about it in the past, but since he was here today, he had to completely resolve this problem no matter what. Before he left, he had to destroy the altar that had such a huge hidden danger. At this time, the battle was coming to an end. The Netherworld Knights who were trapped in the middle were very aggrieved. Who would have thought that they would be trampled under the feet of these brutal fellows before they could even fight a proper battle on the battlefield? Yichun seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Then let me ask you, what's the matter with the ghost mantis? Didn't they come with you?" At the mention of the ghost mantis, Poison Scorpion, who was being trampled under his feet, couldn't help but roar angrily. These damned traitors, idiots. They were originally our battle beasts, but after they were teleported through the altar, I don't know what happened, but they were taken away by the Ghost Mantis King. They didn't listen to our commands at all. They are the disgrace of the Netherworld race. At this time, Xiaoxi had already come out to clean up the battlefield. She collected the corpses of the 50,000 Netherworld Knights without hesitation. The remaining corpses were then left for the Netherworld Mantises to feast on. This was really a feast. On average, each Netherworld Mantis could get more than 50 Netherworld Knights' corpses. At this time, Yichun had already asked everything he could. Poison Scorpion was no longer of any value. As for the 100,000 men led by Qi Lian's snake, they had gone in the opposite direction. They wouldn't be able to return here in a short time. Yichun didn't need to wait here. After chopping off Poison Scorpion's head, Yichun led the team and set off again. Their destination was the Netherworld Knights' headquarters. Yichun brought in Xiaoxi and stood on the hillside outside the Netherworld Knights' headquarters once again. Looking at the constantly patrolling teams, Yichun waved his hand. Immediately, 10 Netherworld Mantises turned invisible and went into stealth mode. After entering stealth mode, they lay in ambush on the path that the patrolling teams had to pass by. At this time, when a team of 100,000 men just passed by, these Netherworld Mantises suddenly attacked violently. In an instant, close to 1,000 Netherworld Knights were killed. Then, these Netherworld Mantises began to run for their lives. Those enraged Netherworld Knights naturally chased after them. After they rushed up the hillside, Yichun immediately descended from the sky. He immediately used the Imperial Lightning Art, and immediately, bolts of lightning fell from the sky. At this moment, crackle, these Netherworld Knights were all enveloped by layers of purple lightning. Sure enough, lightning was their natural enemy. These Netherworld Knights' bodies were frozen for a short period of time. At this time, the deadly Netherworld Mantises began to attack. Like ferocious tigers in a flock of sheep, they quickly reaped the lives of these Netherworld Knights. Yichun didn't show any mercy. The soul-devouring spear in his hand was wrapped in purple lightning. Every time he struck out, a Netherworld Knight would die. Seeing that these Netherworld Knights were about to wake up from their frozen state, Yichun immediately used the Imperial Lightning Art once again. In less than a quarter of an hour, the army of 100,000 was wiped out. At this time, in the Netherworld Knights' headquarters, Poison Scorpion and Qi Lian's snake were not present. The black-robed priest was hiding in the underground palace to repair the altar. Therefore, In the face of such an unforeseen event, these small leaders of the Netherworld Knights couldn't make the best decision in time. After the 3 teams of Netherworld Knights were eliminated, these small leaders couldn't take it anymore. They immediately joined forces and charged ferociously towards the hillside. Chapter 1378. The Nethermantises under Yi Chen's command had long exceeded 1,500 feet in size. Each of them was as ferocious as a small mountain. Yi Chen waved his hand and released a purple lightning net. At this moment, it was as if a small stone had been smashed into a pond, stirring up layers of waves. Yi Chen led more than 900 Nethermantises and charged into the army of more than 600,000 Nether Knights. Rumble! In an instant, the Nether Knights were thrown off their feet. Black blood flowed, and broken limbs flew everywhere. Thousands of Nether Knights surrounded a single Nether Mantis and launched a frenzied attack. This battle was simply earth-shattering, and the sun and moon lost their light. It was very difficult for the Nether Knights to break through the defense of the Nether Mantis. They complained incessantly as soon as they exchanged blows. Moreover, they had the support of the 12th grade Black Lotus of Destruction. Yi Chen's lightning was everywhere. On a battlefield that was constantly changing, just a moment of rigidity could often mean the difference between life and death. Yi Chen fought to his heart's content in this battle. Just the number of Nether Knights that died at his hands was close to 10,000. Although Xiaoxi was not a battle-type person, she seemed to be greatly motivated by this hot-blooded scene. From time to time, she would hide in the back and launch sneak attacks. She actually managed to kill 5 or 6 Nether Knights. Under Yi Chen's encouraging gaze, and Xiaoxi killed even more fervently. This battle lasted for more than 2 hours. All 600,000 Nether Knights were annihilated. Although the Nether Mantises did not die, their bodies were riddled with holes and holes. Some of the Nether Mantises even had their legs chopped off. They looked rather pitiful. However, the harvest was also huge. The corpses of more than 600,000 Nether Knights were scattered all around. It was impossible to see the end of the corpses. The mountains and plains were filled with the remains of these Nether Knights. And Xiaoxi was already used to all of this. Or rather, she did not even treat these Nether Knights as living creatures from the Eldritch world. She put away the corpses of the 300,000 Netherworld Knights, leaving the rest for the Ghost Mantises to deal with. These Nether Mantises could not wait any longer and immediately pounced on the corpses. Their huge bodies were like bottomless pits. The remaining 300,000 Nether Knights and skeletal warhorses were quickly consumed by them. The wounds on their bodies were also quickly recovering, including their broken legs. This made Yi Chen quite satisfied. However, now that the Nether Knights were basically eliminated, he did not know what he could use to continue feeding the Nether Mantises. Perhaps the Nether Mantis could only grow so quickly by devouring these creatures from the Netherworld. Normally, it could only rely on eating ores to sustain itself. After devouring all the Netherworld Knights, most of the Netherworld Mantises had grown to about 6,000 feet in size. Now that there were no more obstructions, they directly walked towards the hall where the Netherworld Knights were. Although there were still a few Netherworld Knights that rushed out of the hall, Yi Chen did not need to do anything. They were all torn apart by the Nether Mantises. Standing in the huge hall where the Netherworld Knights were, Yi Chen looked at the huge demon god statue that was hundreds of feet tall and was deeply shocked. Those blood-red eyes seemed to contain countless mountains of corpses and seas of blood floating in them. A ferocious and bloodthirsty aura emanated from them. Although it was just a statue, it gave Yi Chen a very terrifying feeling. And Xiaoxi did not even dare to look at it. She hid behind Yi Chen and poked her head out to ask, "Master, why is this damn place so empty? Didn't you say that there was a black-robed priest? Why don't I see where he went?" Yi Chen's huge divine sense immediately enveloped the entire hall. He did not miss a single spot. Every single clue was under his detection. Suddenly, Yi Chen realized that the ground under their feet seemed to be empty. Then, Yi Chen waved his hand. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. The earth and rocks on the ground were sent flying. When the smoke and dust dispersed, a huge hole was revealed, and Xiaoxi was stunned. However, she smiled. She was already used to Yi Chen's simple and crude way of doing things. It really saved a lot of time, didn't it? Yi Chen was also a bold person. He said to Xiaoxi, "That old thing is probably hiding down there. Wait outside. I'll go in and take a look." And Xiaoxi said stubbornly, "Master, I'll go wherever you go. I'm not afraid." Yi Chen's huge divine sense enveloped the entire underground palace. Then he smiled and said, "All right, neither of us need to go down. That old thing flew up himself. Let's hide first." Then Yi Chen grabbed Xiaoxi's arm and retreated a few hundred feet in an instant. As expected, there was a crazy roar. A black cloud rose violently from the underground palace. The black-robed priest stood on the black cloud and roared, "Damn it! What happened? Who are you guys? Where are the patrols outside? Are they all dead?" And Xiaoxi stuck her head out from behind Yi Chen and giggled. She covered her mouth and said, "Mr. Priest, you guessed right. Your subordinates and the patrols outside have all been killed by us. Now, you're the only one left among the Netherworld Knights. Give up resisting and surrender. My master might spare your old life. I'm not lying to you. If you insist on resisting, you'll die a horrible death." And Xiaoxi was telling the truth. However, the black-robed priest thought that Xiaoxi was taunting and mocking him on purpose. He was so angry that the black flames on his body burned fiercely. His eyes even shot out a 3-foot-long red light. The black-robed priest's voice was hoarse and cold, as if it came from hell. He said coldly, "I understand. You guys are the damned ants who invaded the territory of the Netherworld Knights. I didn't expect you to have the guts to come to our nest. Since that's the case, I'll kill you." With that, the black-robed priest roared and his entire body exploded. Immediately, thousands of black bats appeared in the hall. Each bat was more than 10 meters long and looked ferocious and terrifying. These black bats screamed and released a headache-inducing sound wave attack. Then, they grabbed at Yi Chen and Xiaoxi as fast as lightning. Their claws were extremely sharp and flickered with a black light. Clearly, they were poisonous. Even the demon gods in the Eldritch world would die immediately if they were scratched by these black bats. Yi Chen wasn't surprised that the black-robed priest could transform into tens of thousands of black bats. As the highest commander of the Nether Knights Vanguard, how could the black-robed priest not have some trump cards? Chapter 1379. Yi Chen didn't pay too much attention to the attacks of these black bats. The 12th grade Black Lotus of world destruction had already enveloped him and Xiaoxi. At this moment, the space that the Black Lotus of world destruction could protect was very small, and its defense was 1,000 times stronger. These black bats could not break through the defense at all. Immediately after, Yi Chen suddenly took out the Fire Spirit Pearl. Suddenly, a raging fire filled the entire hall. The temperature was so high that it could melt iron and stone. The black bats in the hall let out mournful cries as their skin and flesh were burned. They fell from the sky and were burned to ashes in the blink of an eye. However, at the very back of this group of black bats, an inconspicuous black bat silently flew out of the hall the moment the fire started. Unfortunately, Yi Chen's powerful divine senses had already enveloped the entire hall. Nothing could escape his senses. Yi Chen revealed a cold smile. It seemed like this was the main body of the black-robed priest. With a thought, a purple thunderbolt as thick as a water bucket appeared out of thin air. With a loud explosion, it directly bombarded the black bat's body. After a desperate roar, the black-robed priest immediately revealed his body, which was riddled with holes. He was viciously slammed to the ground. Yi Chen calmly stepped over the fire and stood in front of the black-robed priest. The black-robed priest's body was charred by the purple thunderbolt. What's more, Yi Chen had destroyed so many of his clones. He was already at the end of his rope. Yi Chen was about to interrogate the black-robed priest and get some useful information from him. After all, This black-robed priest was the highest commander of the Netherworld Knights Vanguard. Before Jiang Yi could speak, the black-robed priest suddenly laughed bitterly. He said in a hoarse and desperate voice, "Damn it, I am so useless. As the Vanguard, I was trapped in this fog swamp for tens of thousands of years. I was about to repair the sacrificial altar, but I failed in the hands of a group of ants like you. I have failed the high priest's expectations. My soul should go to hell." Finishing his words, the black-robed priest laughed strangely. Yichen instinctively sensed that something was amiss. He immediately grabbed Xiaoxi's body and quickly left the palace, flying several thousand feet into the air. Immediately after, there was a loud explosion as the black-robed priest self-destructed. The Netherworld Knights Hall also collapsed, and countless Netherworld magic stones were blown to the size of fists and scattered everywhere. And Xiaoxi was also frightened by this sudden turn of events. She said in disbelief, "Oh my God, this black-robed priest is too crazy. He doesn't care about his own life at all. Master, the Netherworld race seems to be all madmen." Yichen snorted and said, "This is a madman who has been completely brainwashed. He is also a little cunning. He wants to use self-destruction to hide something." Then Yichen waved his sleeves, and a strong gust of wind swept out in all directions like a level 18 tornado. In the original location of a Nether Knight's nest, all the broken stones and ruins had been lifted into the sky and teleported to an unknown place. By the time the dust settled, the ground was already bare and clean. Yichen brought Xiaoxi down again and found the hole covered by the dust. And Xiaoxi suddenly realized and said, "Master, are you saying that the black-robed priest is trying to hide the underground palace?" "That's right. Let's go down and take a look. Let's see how much he has repaired the altar." Then Yichen broke open a tunnel and walked down with Xiaoxi. They appeared in the underground palace. What entered their eyes was a huge altar that exuded an ancient aura. This altar was already very broken, and there were all kinds of magic stones embedded on it. There were also some patterns that were constantly being repaired. It was just as the black-robed priest had said. It wouldn't take many years for it to be repaired. Suddenly, Yichen looked at the patterns and couldn't help but laugh. Although Yichen wasn't proficient in this array, from some basic knowledge, the black-robed priest had repaired the patterns that contradicted the principles of the array. In other words, he had gotten all wrong. Then, a few geomagnetic lightning bombs appeared in Yichen's hand. He said coldly, "I don't care if what you repaired is right or wrong. Today, I will turn all of this into smoke." Just as Yichen was about to blow up the huge altar, an idea flashed through his mind. He waved his hand, and a few array masters came out of the small world. They knelt on the ground and looked at Yichen with great fanaticism. "Greetings, Your Majesty. Is there anything we can do for you?" Yichen smiled and said, "No need to be so polite. I asked you to come out so that you can take a look at this altar. Can you understand it?" The gazes of these formation masters were immediately attracted by the altar. They gathered around it one after another. After studying it for a while, they said to Yichen, "Your Majesty, this altar is indeed strange. It's a method of reversing yin and yang and reversing the 5 elements. It's not exactly the opposite, but there's a big deviation." Yichen nodded and asked, "Can you repair it?" The array master said confidently, "Your Majesty, there is no problem. However, this array seems to be a channel that connects to a certain realm. Are you sure you want to repair it?" Yichen thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, "Take a closer look at it first, and then make a copy of this altar in the small world for me. However, you're only allowed to complete 90% of the layout. Don't make up the remaining 10%, understand?" These formation masters respectfully accepted the order. They took out special tools and carefully measured the altar. Yichen's order must be carried out to the letter. It wouldn't take long for them to create a perfect replica of the altar in the miniature world. His idea was very simple. Now that he had set up this political altar in the small world, when the time was right, he would go to the netherworld in reverse to investigate it. Of course, now is not the time. After the array masters finished their work and returned to the small world, Yi Chun continued his work. The geomagnetic thunderstorm bomb exploded violently on the broken altar. The altar was completely destroyed in an instant. The smoke and dust dissipated. There was no trace left on the spot. Yi Chun seemed to vaguely hear an extremely angry but helpless roar from the other side of the altar. He sneered. It should be the so-called high priest in the netherworld who, since the destruction of the altar. At this moment, a long-awaited system announcement sounded in the World Channel. Congratulations to player Yi Chun for destroying the Netherworld altar in the Misty Swamp and destroying the Netherworld's plot to invade the Eldritch Continent. The Eldritch Continent hereby rewards Yi Chun with 100 luck points and 100,000 innate attribute points. Congratulations! Chapter 1380. When a long-awaited system notification sounded in the World Channel, it was silent for 3 whole minutes. Then, it caused a huge uproar. Damn, Guru Yi Chun hasn't appeared for a long time. I thought he had silently fallen in the Eldritch world. I didn't expect him to cause such a huge commotion. Haha, you're thinking too much. Guru Yi Chun has always been a quiet person. I wonder what benefits he's reaping. I really want to send quickly. Sigh. If we can't catch up, we won't be able to catch up. The gap between us and Guru Yi Chun is getting bigger and bigger. Yi Chun ignored the comments in the World Channel. He carefully checked his attributes. When he saw that his Eldritch World luck had increased by 100, he immediately laughed out loud. After rising from the Three Kingdoms novice region, Yi Chun knew best what a world's luck meant. This time, it could be said that he had returned from a rewarding journey. Yi Chun looked around. After finding nothing unusual, he prepared to leave. And Xiaoxi followed closely behind Yi Chun and asked nervously, Master, are we going to enter the deepest part of the foggy swamp to take a look? After experiencing so much and knowing how powerful these nether mantises and nether knights were, and Xiaoxi more or less guessed that it was impossible for her father to pass through the periphery and the middle of the foggy swamp alone. However, since they were already here, they would feel unreconciled if they didn't go in and take a look. Yi Chun turned his head to look at Xiaoxi and said calmly, Don't worry. Since we're already here, of course we have to go in. I'm also very curious. What's in the core of the foggy swamp? Then, Yi Chun led the 900 nether mantises and continued to move forward. Of course, Yi Chun didn't forget to inform Xiao He to let his nether mantises occupy the middle area. With these territories, the nether mantis's development speed would double. However, when Yi Chun brought these netherworld mantises to the intersection between the central zone and the core zone of the fog swamp, these netherworld mantises suddenly stopped in their tracks. They were trembling in fear, as if there was something in front of them that they could not resist. Yi Chun suddenly felt a little strange. These nether mantises had always obeyed him, and this was the first time something like this had happened. Since these nether mantises did not dare to enter, Yi Chun did not force them. He turned to Xiaoxi and said, It seems to be very dangerous inside. Do you still want to go in with me? And Xiaoxi nodded abruptly and said resolutely, Master isn't even afraid of you, so I can't back down. No matter what's in front of me, I have to take a look. Yi Chun smiled and nodded. Then, he led Xiaoxi into the core area of the fog swamp. As soon as he stepped into the core area, Yi Chun felt that the temperature here was much higher than outside. A wave of heat rushed towards him, and even breathing became difficult. It was the smell of sulfur. The environment here was also different from the outside world. It seemed to be a red world, and there were cracks everywhere on the ground, spewing out hot air. What was even more exaggerated was that after Yi Chun and Xiaoxi walked for 200 miles, they actually encountered a river of lava. And Xiaoxi rubbed her eyes hard. She was not seeing things. It was a river of lava flowing on the shore. The fiery red lava rolled down, and a terrifying wave of heat rushed over. The hair on Xiaoxi's forehead was a little burnt, and she could not help but take a step back. Seeing this, Yi Chun could not help but shake his head. Then he took out the water spirit pearl and put it on. Instantly, Yi Chun and Xiaoxi were protected by a cooling shield, blocking all the rolling waves of heat outside. And Xiaoxi snorted softly and closed her eyes comfortably. Yi Chun frowned and looked at the river of lava in front of him. The world inside the fog swamp was really too strange. Who would have thought that the core area was a world of lava? No wonder those hell mantises did not dare to step in. Moreover, Yi Chun did not see a single demonic beast after entering this world of lava. It was as if this was a world of death. After being covered by the water spirit pearl, Yi Chun continued to lead and Xiaoxi forward. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Yi Chun swore that he would not stop until he reached the core area of the fog swamp. After Yi Chun and Xiaoxi entered the 5,000-mile radius, the temperature here had soared to more than 800 degrees. It was enough to melt gold and stone. If they were not covered by the water spirit pearl, the two of them would not have been able to withstand it. After arriving here, Yi Chun suddenly felt a sense of fear rising from the bottom of his heart. He turned his head and said to Xiaoxi, "Enter my mini-world first. If I find anything, I will get you out." And Xiaoxi also knew that she could not help Yi Chun in any way at this time. Therefore, she nodded obediently and went straight into Yi Chun's mini-world. Without a burden by his side, Yi Chun finally dared to take large strides forward. He was already holding the Godslayer in his hand, looking around vigilantly. Suddenly, Yi Chun used his fiery golden eyes to discover that there seemed to be a layer of fog in front of him. It was also a camouflage. Yi Chun's lips curled into a cold smile. It seemed that there was something fishy about this place. He directly appeared in front of it in a flash. Without hesitation, he used the Godslayer to break the barrier formed by the camouflage and disappeared in a flash. When Yi Chun reappeared, he found himself in a huge and desolate palace. This palace was really majestic and huge. It was tens of thousands of feet tall. Huge stone pillars that could only be encircled by hundreds of people shot into the sky. Some words were engraved on them that Yi Chun could not understand at all. This palace covered an area of tens of thousands of acres. Every step was tens of feet tall. Yi Chun could not help but feel a little puzzled. What kind of person could live in such a palace? It was probably an ancient giant from the legends. Just like that, Jiang Bufan slowly and cautiously searched for various clues in the hall. When he arrived at the core of the hall, he suddenly saw an extremely shocking scene. At the core of the hall, there was an incomparably thick bronze pillar standing in the middle of the hall. On top of this bronze pillar, there was a huge demonic dragon that was more than 10,000 feet long. Its body was tightly bound by countless black iron chains. These black iron chains were as thick as buckets. Each black iron chain was engraved with mysterious runes. These runes were constantly wriggling as if they were alive. Chapter 1381. The Black Demonic Dragon kept struggling. Sometimes it would grow to over 100,000 feet long, and sometimes it would shrink to the size of a mouse. However, no matter how the black demonic dragon changed, the iron chain on its body would always bind it tightly. As it grew bigger and smaller, the demonic dragon could not break free at all. Yi Chun did not continue to move forward. Instead, he stared at the black demonic dragon cautiously. The black demonic dragon was too terrifying. Its aura had been suppressed, but it still had the aura of a heavenly demon. And Xiaoxi was also a heavenly demon. The flood dragon in the cold pool was also a heavenly demon. However, the two of them were nothing compared to the black demonic dragon. It was like the difference between a 3-year-old child and an adult strong man. The black demonic dragon gave off an evil and terrifying feeling. Its golden eyes revealed a brutal and bloodthirsty aura. Suddenly, the black demonic dragon stared at Yi Chun. It opened its huge mouth and let out a loud voice. "Human, you can actually see me?" Yi Chun took a step back and sneered. "You're so big. I'm not blind. Why can't I see you?" After hearing Yi Chun's words, the black demonic dragon was not angry. Instead, it laughed and said, "Haha, I've been sealed in this damn palace for 100,000 years. That damn guy set up a formation here and sealed my cultivation. Ordinary people can't see my real body at all. As long as they can see me, it means that they are fated to meet me. Little brother, what's your name? The corner of Yi Chen's mouth twitched. Listening to the black demonic dragon's words, it seemed that someone had sealed its cultivation and bound it here. It was now a heavenly demon. So how strong was its cultivation before it was sealed? Or rather, what kind of terrifying cultivation did the person who sealed it have? Yi Chen thought for a moment and answered, I'm Yi Chun from the Untainted Land. Who are you? Why are you sealed here? The black demonic dragon laughed and said, I am Ao Lai, the Lava Dragon King. In the past, I accidentally ate the 2 children of that old bastard, so he cruelly sealed me here for 100,000 years. For 100,000 years, I didn't even drink a mouthful of water or eat a mouthful of meat. Little brother, do you have any food with you? Yi Shiwen thought. Yi Shiwen nodded. Can I have some? Yi Chen's heart skipped a beat, and he said again, I did bring food, but you should know how precious food is in the Misty Swamp. I can give you food, but what do you want in exchange? The Lava Dragon King immediately muttered, I've been locked up for 100,000 years. I don't have anything on me. Everything valuable has been taken away by that old bastard. No, wait a moment. I seem to have some local specialties from my hometown. After saying that, the Lava Dragon King opened its mouth and spat out a pile of fiery red, transparent crystals. Each crystal contained a rich fire element surging inside. Yi Chen's eyes suddenly lit up. It turned out to be some top-grade flame crystals. He knew that if he added a little bit of them while forging a weapon, the weapon would be able to have a fire-attributed attribute. But the Lava Dragon King spat out at least a few thousand of them. If they were outside, they would be priceless treasures. With a wave of his sleeve, Yi Chun unceremoniously collected all the top-grade fire crystals. He wasn't stingy, so he rummaged through his spatial ring and found the corpses of Netherworld knights and skeletal warhorses. But he didn't know if the Lava Dragon King would eat them or not. So Yi Chun directly took out a Netherworld knight's corpse and said, Do you want to eat this thing? The Lava Dragon King glanced at it and frowned in disgust. Isn't this one of those demon bastards from the Netherworld? Their bodies are exuding a rotten stench. I feel disgusted just by looking at them. I don't want to eat them. Yi Chun immediately understood. It seems like the Lava Dragon King and a Netherworld Knight didn't come from the same plane. Therefore, Yi Chun took out a demonic beast that he had hunted in the ancient continent from his spatial ring. It was a demonic bear the size of a small mountain. Since there was no air in the spatial ring, the demonic bear's corpse was still very fresh. Its blood was even very red. The Lava Dragon King's eyes lit up. Then it suddenly opened its mouth and sucked the demonic bear up. Then the Lava Dragon King's mouth expanded dozens of times in an instant and swallowed the demonic bear whole. Then a terrifying chewing sound was heard, and some blood foam kept splashing out from the dark demon dragon's mouth. The Lava Dragon King swallowed the demonic bear in no time. Then the Lava Dragon King laughed and said, It's so satisfying. Little brother Yi Chun, do you have any more delicacies like this? Give me another one. I haven't eaten one for 100,000 years. I'm so touched. Yi Chun didn't say anything. He directly threw out the corpse of a huge demonic wolf, which was as big as the demonic bear. The Lava Dragon King was not picky about food. It immediately opened its mouth and swallowed the demonic wolf. After that, it sighed with satisfaction. It feels so good to be full. Little brother, thank you very much. Yi Chun waved his hand indifferently and said, You're welcome. We're just exchanging benefits. By the way, I have some more corpses of these demon beasts. Do you want them? The Lava Dragon King said with some embarrassment, Of course I want them, but I don't have anything to exchange with you. If you trust me, I'll pay you back double after I get out of here. How about that? Okay, I trust you. Then Yi Chun took out dozens of demon beast corpses from his cosmos ring and threw them on the ground. The Lava Dragon King's eyes lit up as it collected all the demon beast corpses. Yi Chun wondered what kind of storage equipment was hidden in the Lava Dragon King's body. From the beginning to the end, Yi Chun didn't get too close to the Lava Dragon King. After all, from the aura of the Lava Dragon King, Yi Chun knew that this guy was definitely not easy to deal with. Then the Lava Dragon King said gratefully, "Little brother, how did you come to this place? As far as I know, this foggy swamp is full of dangers. In addition to the demon beasts outside, there's also fog everywhere. How did you get here?" Yichen's heart moved. He said, "It's just luck. I happen to have a kind of antidote on me. As for why I'm here, it's mainly to find a friend. Since you've been here for 100,000 years, have you seen a treasure-hunting psychic bird?" Chapter 1382. The Lava Dragon King shook its head without hesitation. "No. Although I'm trapped here, my divine sense can cover the entire core area. I even know a little about what's going on outside. It's been 100,000 years, and I haven't seen a single thing." Yichen nodded with a wry smile. Sure enough, and Xiaoxi's father didn't come here. He must have died before he could break through the area occupied by the Hell Mantises and Hell Knights. The Lava Dragon King asked again, "Little brother, did you get separated from your friend? Why did he come to the Misty Swamp? Did he go somewhere else?" Yichen shook his head and said, "Not necessarily. My friend came here to find the Divine Stone of Communication. Do you know where the Divine Stone of Communication is?" The Lava Dragon King stared blankly for a moment. Then he frowned and began to think. Yichen didn't disturb him. After about a quarter of an hour, the Lava Dragon King suddenly shouted, "I remember now. There is indeed a gem in the core area. It seems to be the Divine Stone of Communication. But that place is very difficult to find. I can't tell you the exact location. How about I take you there myself?" Yichen frowned. Then he looked at the Lava Dragon King and said, "You're tied up now. Do you have a way to leave here?" The Lava Dragon King shook his head and said, "Of course not. That good thing is sealed too thoroughly. My cultivation has dropped to the level of a heavenly demon in the past 100,000 years. I can't get out of here, but I can attach a strand of my divine sense to you and take you there. Come closer to me. I'm too weak now." Yichen's eyes flashed. He slowly took a few steps forward and asked, "What do I need to do to take your divine sense with me?" When Yichen was within 300 meters of the Lava Dragon King, the Lava Dragon King suddenly revealed a sinister smile and said, "Thank you for your trust, little brother. In fact, you don't have to do anything. You just have to die." After that, a crack suddenly appeared on the Lava Dragon King's forehead. Then, a miniature Lava Dragon King that was only 1 foot long shot into Yichen's forehead like lightning and disappeared. Yichen's heart sank. This Lava Dragon King is trying to possess me. Then, he sneered and returned his consciousness to his sea of consciousness. After he entered the knowledge sea, the miniature Lava Dragon King let out an arrogant laugh. "Boy, you've been tricked. Obediently give me your body. It's your honor to be able to serve this king. Come here obediently and let me devour you." Yichen's soul sneered and said, "You're just a piece of trash that has been trapped for 100,000 years. Who gave you the courage to come to my territory? It's easy to come in, but there's no way you can leave." After that, a cyan lotus flag suddenly appeared in Yichen's spiritual space. Then, the cyan lotus flag completely sealed Yichen's spiritual space and protected Yichen's soul with layers of protection. At the same time, the 12th rank Black Lotus of Destruction appeared under Yichen's feet out of thin air. A black flame burned under the Lava Dragon King's feet. The Lava Dragon King screamed in fear. He stomped his feet and roared furiously. "Damn it! Why are there these damned things in your soul?" Yichen snorted and ignored him. If he didn't have so many trump cards and enough information, how could he get close to the Lava Dragon King and give him a chance? The flames of the 12th rank Black Lotus of Destruction kept burning on the Lava Dragon King's body like maggots attached to bones. No matter how hard the Lava Dragon King struggled, it couldn't be extinguished. The Lava Dragon King screamed miserably. In the end, it had no choice but to beg Yichen for mercy. "Sir, I was wrong. I won't do it again. Please spare my life." Seeing that it was almost done, Yichen snorted and waved his hand to take out the ancient contract book. "Come here and sign the contract. From now on, you'll be my mount." The Lava Dragon King's mouth twitched. He was a dignified demon god. Now, he had to be the mount of a human at the level of a golden immortal. What a humiliation! But he had no choice. The situation was beyond his control. Now his life was in the hands of Yichun. After the Lava Dragon King left his soul mark on the ancient contract book, Yichun was relieved. From now on, the Lava Dragon King's life was in his hands. The Lava Dragon King squatted on Yichun's shoulder with a sad face, looking dejected. I was wrong. I was really wrong. If I knew Master had so many treasures, I wouldn't have taken the initiative to walk into the trap. Yichun was a little amused. Looking at the Lava Dragon King who had shrunk countless times, he snorted and said, "You can defy heaven's evil, but you can't escape from your own evil. You want to possess my body? You're dreaming." Lava Dragon King was speechless as well. Who would have thought that a gold immortal would have so many trump cards up his sleeve? Seeing that the Lava Dragon King was still very unhappy, Yichun snorted and said, "Okay, I won't treat you badly if you work for me. Now, I'll think of a way to save your body." The Lava Dragon King's eyes suddenly lit up. He said with a longing look, "Master, what did you say? Is there any way you can free me from that accursed bronze column? You're not deliberately coaxing me, are you? Aren't you talking nonsense? I took you in to be my mount. If your body is trapped here, how do you expect me to ride you? Does it affect your primordial spirit?" The Lava Dragon King immediately chuckled with a simple and honest look. But Yichun knew that it was all an illusion. In fact, the Lava Dragon King was as cunning as a ghost. But now his soul had been branded in the ancient contract book. No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't do any harm to Yichun. Next, Yichun released the Lava Dragon King's primordial spirit back to its original body. When the Lava Dragon King returned to its body, he twisted his huge body, lowered his head, and said with a rumbling voice, "Master, how do you want me to cooperate? Just stay here obediently and don't move." Then, Yichun took the initiative to go forward and study the iron chains that could automatically change their thickness to bind the Lava Dragon King. He found that these black iron chains were actually made of some acquired spirit treasures. Now, in Yichun's eyes, acquired spirit treasures were not good things, but there were too many of them. He roughly counted and found that there were 3,000 black iron chains trapping the Lava Dragon King. Only 3,000 acquired spirit treasures could bind the Lava Dragon King here. Chapter 1383. Yichun discovered that the 3,000 chains were actually connected to each other. When they were combined, they could release a power not weaker than an innate spirit treasure. That was why the Lava Dragon King couldn't do anything about it. What surprised Yichun even more was this. The black chains also carried a trace of terrifying will. Yichun carefully analyzed. This should be the will of the Lord who trapped the Lava Dragon King here. However, 100,000 years had passed, and this trace of consciousness had become quite weak. Perhaps it would completely dissipate in a few tens of thousands of years, and the Lava Dragon King would be able to escape on its own. Unfortunately, the Lava Dragon King couldn't wait and took the initiative to possess Yichun's body. That was why it was subdued by Yichun. Then how should he break these black chains? Yichun thought for a moment, then directly waved the Godslayer in his hand and stabbed at the black chains. With a clang, the God-slaying spear in his hand left a dazzling light on the black iron chain. However, the black iron chain was not damaged at all. The weak runes rotated and eliminated all traces of it. It seemed that he couldn't use force anymore. Yichun thought for a moment, then took the treasure fall coin in his hand. He wasn't sure if the treasure fall coin would work on the black chains, but he just wanted to give it a try. He took a few steps back and suddenly raised his hand. The treasure fall coin hit the black chains like a golden light, making a crisp sound. Then, with a clatter, the black chains fell off from the black demonic dragon's body and fell to the ground. Yichun waved his hand, and the black chain appeared in his hand. When the black demon dragon saw this, it roared excitedly. "It's effective. It really is effective. Master, you are too powerful. Hurry up and save me from this damned place. I am willing to be your mount. Yi Chen stroked the black chains in his hand with satisfaction. Each black chain was about 1,000 feet long. Of course, this was only his body and not his limit, because when the Lava Dragon King's body expanded, the black chains could also expand to more than 10,000 feet long. These black chains were all good stuff. They could be of great use at critical moments. In that case, Yi Chen did not hold back. As he waved his hand, the black chains fell to the ground. In less than an hour, the 3,000 black chains had become Yi Chen's personal collection. When Yi Chen took all 3,000 black chains into his hands, they merged into one and formed a single black chain. The black chain was clearly a Khanate spirit treasure. Following Yi Chen's will, it transformed into a small bracelet and wrapped itself around Yi Chen's wrist. With a thought from Yi Chen, the black bracelet on his wrist immediately soared into the sky, transforming into 3,000 black dragon-like chains that tightly bound the Lava Dragon King, who had just escaped and was about to roar into the sky like a dumpling. The Lava Dragon King was stunned. It raised its head and looked at Yi Chen pitifully, feeling very wronged. Yi Chen laughed. With a wave of his hand, the black chains automatically flew back and wrapped around his wrist. This was a rare treasure. Next, the Lava Dragon King's body rapidly shrank until it was only 100 feet long. Then, it respectfully laid down at Yi Chen's feet, lowered its head, and said in a deep voice, "Subordinate Ao, Lai pays his respects to Master. Thank you for saving my life. I am willing to go through water and tread on fire for Master." Yi Chen nodded and directly sat on the Lava Dragon King's body. After giving the order, the Lava Dragon King let out a long roar and soared into the sky like a demonic dragon roaming above the 9 heavens. This was much more comfortable than riding on the giant praying mantis, and the speed was also much faster. The Lava Dragon King's body had grown to about 1,000 feet in the air, and its aura had stabilized at the sky demon level. Yi Chen seemed to think of something and asked, "Just now, you said that you know the whereabouts of the psychic stone. Is that true?" Lava Dragon King said embarrassedly, "Master, I'm just spouting nonsense. I just wanted to lower Master's vigilance so that I can seize Master's body. I've been here for 100,000 years, and I haven't sensed any strange rocks in this foggy swamp." Yi Chen also sighed. He knew that the psychic stone would not appear so easily. However, the harvest this time was indeed very big. Not only did he get a piece of spirit treasure level equipment, but he also got a mount that could evolve into a sky demon level. In addition, there was the Hell Mantis Little Black in the foggy swamp. As long as Little Black was here, the foggy swamp would be Yi Chen's backyard. Then, Yi Chen called in Xiaoxi out of the small world, and Xiaoxi appeared on the back of the Lava Dragon King. When she saw that she was riding such a big Lava Dragon King, she immediately screamed in fright. Yi Chen said seriously, "Don't be nervous. This is a mount that I just tamed. It is also the Lava Dragon King that has been trapped in the core area of the foggy swamp for 100,000 years. I just asked it just now. There is no psychic stone in the entire foggy swamp. It also did not feel your father's arrival. Maybe he did not come to the foggy swamp." And Xiaoxi's face suddenly became gloomy. Although she had already guessed this result, she was still a little disappointed. She forced a smile and said, "Master, you don't have to comfort me. I am fine. Although I did not find my father, at least I did not hear any bad news about him. Maybe we will have a chance to meet again in the future." Yi Chen patted in Xiaoxi's shoulder and hugged her thin body. He said in a deep voice, "You are right to think this way. Don't worry. I will send people to find your father's whereabouts. As long as he is still alive, we will definitely find him." And Xiaoxi was very grateful. She said with affection in her eyes, "Master, why are you so good to me?" Yi Chen laughed, but did not answer her. Instead, he stood on the back of the Lava Dragon King and said in high spirits, "Okay, it is almost time. We should leave here. Before we leave, let's go and see Little Black." Suddenly, the Lava Dragon King flew into the abyss at lightning speed. The demonic dragon's speed was too fast. It took less than an hour to cross the middle area and reach the periphery of the foggy swamp. Yichen had already ordered the 900 helmantises to come back. At this time, they were guarding their nest with unusual vigilance. With the 900 helmantises that were more than 1,500 feet in size, Little Black's safety was greatly improved. Blackie's safety was greatly improved. Yichen's figure flashed and appeared in the huge hall. Little Black immediately stood up respectfully and said, "Master, you are back." Chapter 1384. Yichen and Xiaoxi left the foggy swamp together. He left behind 100,000 Hell Knights' corpses for Little Black. Yichen estimated that these corpses could help Little Black evolve again. Of course, he also took 1,000 Hell Mantis eggs with him. He would be able to conduct his experiments once he got out. After leaving the foggy swamp, Yichen and Xiaoxi's eyes suddenly opened up. The long-awaited fresh air rushed to their faces. All 36,000 pores on their bodies exuded a pleasant aura, and Xiaoxi even opened her arms and screamed loudly. She even transformed into her original form and flew freely in the sky. It was said that she was as happy as a little bird. This should be how Xiaoxi was right now. After flying in the sky for a long time, she returned to Yichen's side and transformed into Xiaoxi. She squinted her big eyes slightly and said with infatuation, "Master, after experiencing the foggy swamp, I realize that the outside world is the best. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth everywhere, the warm sunlight, and all kinds of delicious food." Yichen nodded. He turned his head and looked at the foggy swamp surrounded by fog in the distance. He said, "Because of this, the foggy swamp has its own uniqueness. Because no one can enter, there are so many precious minerals in there. But now, they all belong to me." Yichen was in a good mood. He had already told Little Black to go all out and spread the Hell Mantis around the foggy swamp as soon as possible. Especially at the border of the foggy swamp, they had to be strictly guarded and prevent other explorers from entering. Once they were discovered, they would be killed without mercy. The Hell Mantis had a natural advantage in the foggy swamp. They could also hide. With the help of the 1,000 giant Hell Mantis that had evolved, the foggy swamp could be said to be foolproof. The Lava Dragon King roared excitedly. "Ha! After 100,000 years, Aeolai have finally come out again. Thank you, Master." Then, the Lava Dragon King took out a demonic beast's corpse from its space and began to eat heartily. Yichen looked at the Lava Dragon King eating heartily. He was still a heavenly demon. It would not be easy for him to return to his previous realm. Suddenly, Yichen thought of something, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. "Aeolai, do you want to eat something fresh? I know of an old WYRM in a cold pond. This old WYRM is also a heavenly Yao. I wonder if you can beat it?" Lava Dragon King's eyes lit up. He couldn't wait to ask, "Master, where's the old flood dragon? I'm going to kill him. What kind of rubbish is he to be called a dragon?" Then, with Yichen's guidance, they rode on the Lava Dragon King and traveled as fast as lightning. It didn't take long for them to arrive above the cold pond. The water surface was calm, but Yichen knew that the old flood dragon was hiding under the cold pond. Yichen casually pointed, and the Lava Dragon King suddenly roared and fell into the cold pond. His body had also suddenly returned to its original size of more than 10,000 feet. When he entered the cold pond, intense white qi immediately rose up. The Lava Dragon King's body emitted an extremely high temperature, which made the whole cold pond boil. The water temperature directly rose by dozens of degrees. The old flood dragon under the water felt the rising water temperature and was very uncomfortable. He roared and poked his head out of the water. When he saw the Lava Dragon King, he was shocked. The old flood dragon said with a trembling voice, "Your Excellency, who are you? Why are you being so presumptuous in my place?" The Lava Dragon King looked at the old flood dragon with slight contempt, and a cruel look appeared on his face. "You're not small. You've already evolved 2 front claws. If I give you tens of thousands of years, I'm afraid you'll really evolve into a divine dragon. Unfortunately, you won't have the chance. Little Loach, you'd better be obedient and be my meal." The old flood dragon was furious and roared angrily. "Bastard, you and I are both heavenly demons. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The lava dragon king immediately spat out a mouthful of flames in disdain and then laughed mockingly. "You're not only childish, but also stupid. How dare you compare yourself with me, the lava dragon king, with your messy little loach bloodline? Not to mention that we're at the same cultivation level. Even if you're 2 levels higher than me, I'll kill you like a dog." After saying that, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the lava dragon king. It was ferocious. Then, the lava dragon king roared to the sky, and the dragon might on its body overwhelmed the old flood dragon. The old flood dragon was terrified. The suppression of his bloodline made him feel hopeless. In front of the lava dragon king, his bloodline instinctively wanted to submit, and he couldn't even muster up any thoughts of resistance. The old flood dragon was very anxious. He desperately mobilized the energy in his body to counterattack, but the lava dragon king had already pounced on him. Its thick and huge body grabbed the old flood dragon tightly, and then it suddenly soared into the sky. The 2 terrifying demonic dragons, about 10,000 feet long, started fighting in the sky just like that. For a moment, demonic winds blew, and sand and stones flew. The sky darkened. The terrifying aura of the 2 demonic dragons made all the demonic beasts within thousands of miles tremble in fear. They rolled and crawled out of this area. It was too dangerous. No demonic beasts dared to come over to investigate. After all, the dragon might of the old flood dragon and the lava dragon king were enough to scare these ordinary demonic beasts. Sure enough, the old flood dragon wasn't a match for the lava dragon king. It constantly let out shrill cries, and the dragon's scales on its body fell from the sky. Blood flowed out like an open river. Not long after, the old flood dragon's neck was bitten off by the lava dragon king. It fell from the sky like a dead snake and fell on the rocks by the shore. The lava dragon king shouted excitedly and then pounced on the old flood dragon and started eating. Although the old flood dragon's bloodline wasn't pure, it still had a trace of the divine dragon's bloodline. Only by eating its own kind could the lava dragon king recover faster. "Leave the dragon tendon and the dragon teeth for me," Yi Fan said indifferently. The dragon tendon and the dragon teeth were good materials for making magic treasures. They couldn't be wasted. The lava dragon king immediately pulled out the dragon tendon and the dragon teeth, and then gave them to Yi Chun respectfully. It really had a good appetite. The lava dragon king actually swallowed the entire flood dragon into its stomach. Then, the lava dragon king burped, and its face was full of satisfaction. It had been 100,000 years, and it hadn't had such a satisfying meal. Moreover, it was an old flood dragon with the true dragon's bloodline. Chapter 1385. The most valuable and essential part of the old flood dragon was its inner core. The lava dragon king wanted to give the inner core to Yi Chun, but Yi Chun gave it to Xiaoxi as a reward. And Xiaoxi was so touched that her beautiful eyes turned red and tears almost fell. She didn't even dare to think about the inner core of the old flood dragon. She didn't expect her master to give it to her without batting an eyelid. If Xiaoxi could refine the inner core of the old flood dragon, not only would her cultivation level increase greatly, but her bloodline would also evolve. Next, Yi Chun found an immortal's cave that was rich in spiritual energy around the cold pond. He planned to hatch the eggs of the nether mantis here first. And Xiaoxi sat at the entrance of the cave, refining the inner core of the old flood dragon while protecting Yi Chun. As for the lava dragon king, he didn't have such good treatment. He lay outside the cave, guarding the cave residents. The terrifying dragon aura on his body was wreaking havoc in all directions. The lava dragon king bathed in the sunlight, feeling a little comfortable and sleepy. However, he still had to bear the heavy responsibility of guarding the cave residents. He didn't dare to be careless. A pair of huge eyes opened wide like copper bells. Yi-Chin carefully placed 1,000 nether mantis eggs on the ground. Then he took out a few thousand pieces of top-grade immortal stones and set up a spirit-gathering array. Suddenly, countless spirit chi of heaven and earth swept over and continuously poured into the eggs of the nether mantis. The moment Yi-Chan placed the eggs of the nether mantis, countless black clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. It was as if something that the heavenly Tao didn't like had appeared. Then, lightning began to brew in the black clouds. However, after Yi-Chan set up the spirit-gathering array, the aura of the nether mantis eggs was isolated. The lightning in the sky couldn't find the aura of the nether mantis and gradually dissipated. As the spiritual energy of heaven and earth continued to pour into the nether mantises, the nether aura on the eggs became weaker and weaker. Gradually, they were also contaminated with the chi of the primitive continent. In this way, the heavenly Tao of the primitive continent would no longer reject these nether mantises. These nether mantis eggs were like children that couldn't be fed, constantly devouring the surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi, and the energy of the 1,000 pieces of supreme-grade immortal stones was quickly used up. Yi-Chin took out another 100,000 supreme-grade immortal stones and wrapped them up. Countless heaven and earth spirit chi poured into the cave, and the spirit chi was so dense that it almost turned into liquid. Yi-Chin looked at these nether mantises. It would take some time for them to hatch, so he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to begin cultivating. Yi-Chin's cultivation had already reached the critical point of the golden immortal realm. He was just a little bit away from breaking through to the Daluo Jinxian. However, Yi-Chin was not in a hurry to break through. Instead, he constantly strengthened his foundation. The stronger the foundation, the stronger he would be after breaking through. Yi-Chin's body had long been free of impurities, but it was inevitable that there would still be traces of filth. What Yi-Chin needed to do was to constantly use the heaven and earth spirit chi to cleanse his body and make it crystal clear. He didn't know how long he had been cultivating, but in any case, Xiaoxi had completely refined the nether core of the old flood dragon. If Xiaoxi were to fight against the old flood dragon again, she would be able to hold on for hundreds of rounds without being defeated. This was already very fast for her. Xiaoxi carefully left the cave residence and guarded outside like the Lava Dragon King. The Lava Dragon King glanced at Xiaoxi and closed its eyes in fear. Although they were all Yi-Chin's pets, Xiaoxi was different. She was a woman and was deeply doted on by Yi-Chin. The Lava Dragon King had no choice but to be careful. Yi-Chin didn't know how long he had been cultivating. Suddenly, his ears twitched and he heard a slight cracking sound. He opened his eyes abruptly and saw that one of the nether mantis eggs had a thin pattern on it. Following that, more and more patterns appeared on the egg. Then, a small and slender figure suddenly broke free from the egg. Its dark body seemed to be made of black iron. Its black, jade-like eyes stared coldly at the surroundings. Then, it turned around and ate the egg skin clean. Yi-Chan waved his hand, and the palm-sized nether mantis appeared in his hand. He carefully observed the nether mantis. Its aura was completely different from the nether mantis in the foggy swamp. Yi-Chan was relieved that the nether mantis had completely integrated into the untainted world. Then, Yi-Chan tested the nether mantis. Its body seemed to be as strong as a low-grade spiritual weapon. This was already very powerful. After all, it was just born. Then, Yi-Chin took out a Netherworld Knight's corpse and threw it aside. Immediately, the small Netherworld mantis in his hand was attracted by it. Its small body turned into a black light and instantly pounced on the corpse. Then, the crunching sounds of the corpse being eaten were heard. Then, the nether mantises began to hatch one after another. In about 4 hours, all the nether mantises had hatched. At this time, in the depths of the cave, the 1,000 palm-sized nether mantises were gnawing on the corpses of the nether knights. They were very fast. In less than 15 minutes, they had already eaten more than 200 corpses of the nether knights. Their bodies also grew rapidly like balloons. They were now more than half a meter long. Yichun could now communicate with them. The thoughts that the nether mantises transmitted to Yichun were also relatively clear. However, they still did not know how to become invisible. The most important thing was that they had to be at least 2 meters long to become invisible. Anyway, these little guys would not be full. Therefore, Yichun directly left 100,000 corpses of the Nether Knights in the cave for these little guys to eat. In the next few days, Yichun rode the Lava Dragon King and continued to search for treasures within Xiaoxi. After Xiaoxi returned to the untainted world, she was like a fish back in water. Any treasure within 1,000 miles of her could not be hidden from her. Yichun also made a lot of money. As long as Xiaoxi found a treasure, they would ride the Lava Dragon King and kill it. If there were demonic beasts guarding the treasure or demonic beasts that wanted to rob the treasure, they would be directly handed over to the Lava Dragon King. 3 days later, Yichun returned to the cave. These nether mantises had grown to about 30 meters. After another half a month, Yichun had finished feeding all the corpses of the Nether Knights that he had stored. These nether mantises had also grown to about 300 meters in size. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.